Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 10 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, our program will begin in 5 minutes. Ladies and gentlemen, our program is about to begin. Please welcome Mirabella Brocate Elbaz, Global Head of Brand and Marketing at Semafor.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to this morning's session, kicking off day 2 of Semafor's 2025 World Economy Summit, Fostering Global Innovation. It is so wonderful to have you all with us today. I am Mirabella Brocate Elbaz, Global Head of Brand and Marketing here at Semafor. And for those of you who may not be entirely familiar with Semafor, we were founded 2.5, nearly 3 years ago to help leaders find clarity in an increasingly interconnected world, guiding them through an environment that is increasingly shaped by polarization with our fair-minded and intelligent and global journalism. Today, we've amassed nearly 1 million subscriptions from around the world, and global leadership is increasingly turning to us and our journalism for our sophisticated, balanced news and insights. The World Economy Summit is our platform dedicated to advancing the dialogues that we believe are most critical. They're those that strengthen resilience and catalyze global growth amidst a shifting global economy. And we didn't quite imagine when we kind of developed this mission and we sought out to kind of deliver on this ambition that this year's summit would actually kind of occur at such a consequential time. We're gathered here in Washington at a moment of extraordinary uncertainty and extraordinary transformation in the global economy. And it's a moment that demands clarity, leadership, wisdom, and dialogue across sectors, borders, and ideologies. This morning's session explores innovation as a central driver of economic progress and global competitiveness. So across today's conversations, you'll hear how leaders are approaching innovation, not just through the development of new products, but through bold shifts in strategy, in culture, and in policy. So from reimagining legacy institutions to advancing AI and modernizing infrastructure, the dialogue today will reflect the very diverse ways that innovation is being put to work across boardrooms, across government ministries, and across borders. But first of all, I would like to thank, with our deepest gratitude, Mubadala for being a founding partner of Semafor's World Economy Summit platform. And it is now my pleasure to introduce Ahmed Saeed Al-Khalili, Mubadala's Chief Strategy and Risk Officer. So please join me in welcoming him. Good morning, Ahmed.
Good morning.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Well, thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Well, as we open up this session on fostering global innovation, I'm looking forward to kind of hearing your perspective and your view from where you sit, obviously crafting and steering and championing Mubadala's strategy and growth, particularly as one of the most globally active investment platforms in the world. And that global connectivity of Mubadala's is something that I've come to see firsthand in working with you all. That is a defining strength of your model. And so I'd love to just kind of hear you speak a bit to how that international footprint and that kind of global wingspan has shaped your approach to partnerships and informed the way that you operate.
Well, I mean, as you know, maybe starting with sort of just a brief introduction, Mubadala, a global sovereign wealth fund with 300 billions of assets across many geographies, with footprint and offices in London, New York, in Brazil. So again, a global investor with offices, foots on the ground, enables us to be sort of connected to the world. And going back to sort of how we started as Mubadala, as a company that our origins in business building sort of has enabled us to be very connected to many of the sort of the companies around the world. As we evolved into an investment company, again, our relationship with partners, GPs across the globe, has enabled us to be sort of really a trusted partner and has given us access. And with that access, I think, but even more importantly, with beyond access, having that sort of foresightedness and willingness to innovate and willingness to be forward-leaning has enabled us to sort of expand our footprint, our sort of investment sort of thesis across many sectors. And of course, not only the traditional sectors that we've been involved in as Mubadala, but jumping all the way now to sort of the AI boom and being sort of at the forefront of that sort of globally sort of transformative sort of play has enabled us really to be at the forefront of the investment landscape.
Well, clearly the approach is working, and I think the momentum behind Mubadala right now is tremendous. And I think Global Sovereign Wealth Fund recently reported, and Semaphor's own Mohamed Sergey also reported this, that Mubadala actually deployed more capital across last year than any other sovereign wealth fund in the world. And so I'd love to kind of understand, and I know you have not yet released your results formally, but how that kind of has been powered by a structurally different organization, and how that actually has enabled you to operate at this scale, but do so at such a rapid pace.
Well, I mean, I can't really comment on a report that we have not been involved in preparing or contributing. But I think what I can tell you is that, as an institution that thinks not only in quarter to quarter, but thinks of multi-year, decades, we will continue, and we have continued to deploy through the cycles. And even this period of volatility and where sort of people are pulling back, we will continue to deploy. Because again, many of the great opportunities that we've been involved in and you will see actually happen at times of dislocation and times of volatility. So again, our posture is we're a long-term investor. We're connected. We see opportunities, and we will jump on opportunities even during times of stress and dislocation.
And you just talked about Mubadala's kind of long-term view and just that long-term thesis to your investment strategy. But to be able to do that successfully, I think you've kind of shown that you've been able to spot opportunistically kind of the zeitgeist of the moment. You just talked about AI, but I think this dates back to Mubadala's very early investment in global foundries and semiconductors as well. Obviously investments in energy with Masdar and just a number of global megatrends that have become incredibly consequential to the world. And so where are you seeing the biggest opportunities lie, and how are you spotting them? What is your strategy to spotting those in terms of how they're going to play out across the next decade?
Well, I mean, obviously, we follow the sort of the megatrends that are shaping the world. Many investors do that. But again, I think, beyond just being connected and understanding and being sort of in the flow, I think you need sometimes the guts to sort of jump on opportunities and be a steady partner and a partner of choice. And I think our deep sector expertise, we have fantastic teams that are really thought partners to many of the top investment firms around the world, where we have these dialogues. We sort of, when we co-invest, we co-underwrite, we come with conviction, and again, we deploy when people are pulling away. So I think that is really the strength of Mubadala, and being very innovative in the way we explore opportunities, because you have to be nimble and you have to be entrepreneurial. And I think that's one of the strengths of Mubadala. Again, being able to take risks, being able to sort of spot the opportunity and shift and create sort of the structures. And when we think of Mubadala, again, Mubadala has many sort of vehicles of growth and activity. Where with sort of our PE, we have our sort of endowment model in ADIC, and our investments and spurring and co-investing and co-founding. Global champions like MGX. Now, you have to be willing to innovate and to go out of your comfort zone to be able to really make a difference and an impact.
Yeah, and you mentioned MGX, obviously in AI, and I know there's a lot that you're doing in the healthcare space as well, and many other sectors, and I think the breadth, but also to your point, the depth and the kind of deep partnerships that you forge is striking. And when I think about a lot of those investments, and in particular Abu Dhabi's AI ecosystem, which is obviously has tremendous momentum behind it right now, it's very clear that innovation relies on much more than just capital. It relies on enabling regulation, on building very powerful talent pipelines, and so what kinds of ecosystems across whether it's government ecosystems or others do you see as kind of most critical to building and scaling innovation globally, and perhaps what is the world not paying attention to that it should be?
So, I mean, I'll answer your question, but maybe just step back for us as Mubadala, as we think of sort of the innovation hotspots around the world and where we want to be present and where do we want to deploy our capital. I mean, again, I will talk about the UAE, but again, the US, despite everything that you see today, is still our number one destination for investment in innovation. Mm-hmm. I mean, the ecosystem that exists in the US, I mean, you spoke about sort of government enabling the environment, but more so the availability of talent and the strength of academia, I think is key to really fostering innovation. So I think the US is still our number one market, and we will continue to deploy in the US. But taking that sort of back home, and I think, the UAE is, I mean, we were talking about this morning. I mean, the UAE is a young country, but again, a young country with sort of a foresighted leadership that understands that sort of you need to really play a bigger role to really align, government regulations, government enablement, funding, attraction of talent. So all of that is converging at the UAE. The UAE is probably one of the first countries to have a minister of AI, to have an AI university dedicated to sort of advancing the AI sort of agenda, and creating sort of the champions and the ecosystem in the UAE. And we're playing a role in that. I mean, we've set up Hub 71 a few years back to support innovation, to support startups and founders, providing capital to sort of create champions in the UAE. And many other partners in the UAE are also aligning to that government vision of really creating a sort of an innovation ecosystem that is sustainable in the UAE.
I mean, it sounds like it's just embedded within the DNA of the UAE to kind of think in that coordinated and forward-looking fashion. And obviously, setting a vision and developing a sound strategy is incredibly important, but really embedding innovation culturally within Mubadala has also been key to actually delivering on a lot of these kind of early investments. And so from a leadership standpoint, how do you go about building that culture within Mubadala? And especially, I think right now, when we're in such a cycle of disruption and an era of change, where it's kind of difficult to kind of encourage, the whole organization to work in a coordinated way. I
mean, you said leadership, and I think leadership, having a leadership that creates a space for people to innovate, experiment, and allows people to fail at times, is very important, and pushing people to work together and adopt innovative ways, I think, is definitely key. And we're fortunate as a country to have a leadership that allows and sort of encourages innovation and experimentation, and is okay if you fail. It's okay. It's not a mark of shame. It's actually it's encouraged for you to experiment, because that's how progress is made. And in Mubadala, looking inward in Mubadala, I think, again, our leadership has allowed that. Again, I've spoken about sort of how we're innovative in the way we're risk takers. We allow people to experiment, and also fostering an environment of collaboration and a safe space for people to feel comfortable to take things and take it to the next level.
Well, Ahmed, that's unfortunately all the time we had, but thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you. Pleasure.
Please welcome Representative Mike Paradopoulos of Florida and Kadia Goba, politics reporter at Semafor.
Congressman Mike Paradopoulos, welcome to the World Economy Summit.
Great to be here.
You're new to the House of Representatives, but you have a long history in Florida politics. I was hoping you'd join us today so you could unpack that, talk about that a bit. So thank you for being here. Let me start with this. The president's home state is at the center of the universe right now in terms of politics. Congressman Donalds is already in the fight or running for governor, but I can't help but notice Matt Gaetz constantly posting about potential threats coming from Casey DeSantis. What do you make of that? Like, is the governor's race going to be like a messy turf war?
Well, as a Republican, I hope not. But the good news is I think that Byron Donalds has really solidified a lot of the base. Of course, he has the support of the president. I think he's in a fantastic position to win not only the nomination, but the governor's race. As you know, we were once a purple state. We are now, without doubt, a true red state. Ron DeSantis won by approximately 19 points. The president won by 13 points. We feel very confident whoever the nominees would win, but I think Byron has really solidified a lot of the former donors of Ron DeSantis in his quest for the governorship, and I think he'll be in a strong position. We'll have to see how Casey DeSantis decides to run or not. Should she not run, I think Byron has a pretty clear shot at the nomination, and we have no idea who the Democrat might be, considering their bench is greatly diminished in the last few years.
I've spoken to you about Florida in the past. You lauded the current governor, DeSantis. Does his wife have a chance?
No, without doubt. If anyone who's met Casey DeSantis knows she is a very capable person. She's also a cancer survivor, a mother, just a great individual, and actually really has a great grasp of policy as well. But I think what Byron Donalds has done is he has not only supported the president, but been very accurate in describing what we need to turn this economy in the right direction. He's a fellow member of the Financial Services Committee, and if you actually spend any time with him, you'll see he's very capable on the issues. I think he has kind of galvanized the support he needs to become the next governor. But let's not forget, Ron DeSantis has done a remarkable job as governor, not just through the COVID situation, but growing the Florida economy. And remember, when he was elected governor back in 2018, there were 400,000 more registered Democrats. Today, there are 1.2 million more registered Republicans. $1.6 million person swing in just a few short years. And it shows that great policy makes great politics.
Oh, big accolades for DeSantis. So I can't tell who you're going to back. Is it going to be Donalds? Or
I serve with Byron Donalds on the Financial Services Committee, and he's a great friend. Let's leave it at that.
Okay. And pulling back a bit, what should investors and observers unfamiliar with the ways of Florida politics know about how the state really works?
Well, the state, what we have really prided ourselves on, and those who don't know, of course, Republicans have now dominated Florida politics, but historically we've been what we call a center-right state. Going back to Eisenhower, Eisenhower won as a Republican in Florida, though it was a blue state, so to speak, back in the 50s. For that matter, John F. Kennedy lost to Nixon in 1960, to give you an idea of where Florida voters are. What has really happened in the last 20 years, and in case you haven't known, I wrote the book on it. The idea is this, is that we are a center-right state, and as the Democrats in Florida move to more national, more liberal Democrats, they have really lost ground in Florida. But what has really, I think, helped us, even when we had bad years nationally, 2006, 2018, bad year for Republicans, Republicans in Florida still did incredibly well. We won the governor's races both years. In fact, Ron DeSantis, of course, in 2018, even Rick Scott won a tight race for the Senate in 2018. But what makes us, I think, successful is that we are competent. I mean, you know how we handle hurricanes very well. It's a reality of living in Florida. We have great directors that you would call FEMA here in Washington, D.C., and we handle the government in a competent way. The other thing that we do is we have balanced budgets without raising taxes. For example, when I was leader of the Senate back in 2012, we had a large budget shortfall. And in Washington, D.C., they consider a cut a slowdown in the increase. We actually had to spend less money year over year. And what we did, we made hard choices. And so what we offer to the business community is a couple things. One is we offer certainty and stability. And they also know that they're not going to have a tax increase. And that's why you've seen so many folks move into Florida. And because of that competency and certainty and stability. I think that's why the Florida economy has done so well, and why Republicans in turn have done so well.
How do you account for the national boom of politicians coming from Florida? You look at the administration, there are a ton of Floridians there, talking Pam Bondi, the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Who's pulling those? Who's doing that? Is it Susie Wiles, the Chief of Staff, who's also a Floridian?
Well, as a Floridian, I like to say they look to excellent leaders, and they find excellent results. But look at Pam Bondi as Attorney General. Marco Rubio, by the way, I think he's done a phenomenal job as Secretary of State already. He's handled some very unique situations right away. He's got his hands full, of course, with Ukraine, let alone Russia right now. He's got his hands full with some other parts of the world. Now we have this crisis, unfortunately, with India and Pakistan. He's got a lot on his plate, but he is one of the best communicators in the world if you spent time with him. But I think, again, as I mentioned, why Pam, why Marco? For that matter, we have the Chief of Staff, Susie Wiles. The president is now from Florida. I mean, it is one where he has seen in his own backyard, the president, that these folks know how to handle situations. Have done incredibly well in Florida, and why not bring more of Florida up to Washington, D.C. is kind of been my vision. And I have the honor of chairing the Space Committee, and we are very much committed to making sure that we are space dominant once again as we face these challenges from the Chinese. But it's going to be a rough tussle, because what the president is attempting to do, and we had a great conversation about last night at dinner, is he's trying to transform this economy from being government-centered to being a more capitalistic economy in some ways, and also what we would consider level playing field.
Well, while we're there, let's get into some policy, specifically digital assets. You're on the Financial Services Committee. As states explore including digital assets in their pension fund portfolios, Florida's considering it. I just saw legislation the other day about it to allow Bitcoin and other digital investments. What considerations related to long-term risks should they be aware of?
Well, first, what we need to do, and unfortunately, the Gensler regime was not too successful the last 4 years, and we need to offer certainty and stability to that new emerging crypto or blockchain market that we're all talking about in the Financial Services Committee. Right now, because we've not offered stability, they're going to places like UAE, Singapore, for that matter, El Salvador. I mean, we have to offer them certainty and stability to know which regulatory body they're serving under. It's the CFTC, is the SEC. What is the situation? And so we've already passed what we call digital assets out of our committee, bipartisan support. We need to do the same with what we call market structure. That's where those companies that are coming into this field will know if they do business in the United States, who will regulate them in a straightforward way. Because right now, or the last 4 years, there's been that uncertainty. And that's why we have not seen the capital investment we want to see. We're confident under the leadership in the House of French Hill, our chairman, that if we offer market structure and digital assets, that those resources that are going in different places will come to the United States, and we will be the nation that leads this charge. I'm a big believer in blockchain and digital assets. I think it is the future, but we need to do it in a way that's constructive, and we don't want to limit the possibilities that these might have, because if we get too restrictive, you won't see the innovation and change that we need in this ever-changing world.
I wanted to touch on that. You did pass the stable coin legislation. Will the House wait to schedule a floor vote on market structure like Coinbase has been pushing you guys, or are you willing to put the stablecoin bill on the floor before that?
Again, I'll just give you my take. I can't speak for others, but I think that the key is they have to go hand in hand. If you have the digital assets bill, which is a fabulous bill, and again, bipartisan support, but the only way to really make that mesh together is have the market structure bill with it, so those companies, the big and small alike, will know exactly what the rules are and aren't, and how they can operate best in the United States. And so I would like to see those two be married up before it goes to the floor. I think that's the best way to do it. Obviously, I'd like to see the House version, but that is something that I know they're communicating about right now. But again, certainty and stability is what built Florida to find the success. I think the same thing needs to be hold true with digital assets and market structure. If we do that, I think that the capital will flood into the United States, just like we've seen in the last few months, trillions of dollars come into the United States, because they know that the regulatory environment and the tax environment, once we settle the bill, will be more stable. And I think that that's what people are looking for around the world.
So it sounds like you want to wait.
I want to wait, but I want to make sure they're in line, because, again, one without the other won't be the marriage that I think we need.
You talked about space. being on the committee, DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, shuttered 3 departments in NASA. And the agency subsequently canceled about $420 million in grants and contracts. Are you concerned about the jobs in Cape Canaveral because that's in your district? You serve on that committee. Can you talk about that?
No, look, I mean, it's good and bad. But here's the reality. Just a few years ago, we were relying on the Russians to get their own space station. I mean, these are the folks who literally fought us in the Cold War, involved in the first space race, which we, of course, won in 1969. But we've been not back to the moon since 1972. We're going back to the moon. Artemis 2 goes off next spring. In my district, SpaceX just invested $1.8 billion in our district, 600 jobs after the construction's done. These are high-paying six-figure jobs at minimum. We are very confident of where we're going, and we need to create the right mix between NASA, our government space, and commercial space. I was literally at Blue Origin 2 days ago. They are on emerging as well. Starship is coming to Florida. I'm actually cautiously optimistic NASA will move the headquarters to Florida. But that said, NASA's got to find its right spot. There is absolutely a role for NASA. Some of the numbers that are being thrown around, I think, are preliminary. There are some concerns about some of our satellites and telescopes, but we're going to find that right mix. Dr. Babin, who runs the entire science committee, which I chair the space subcommittee, we are finding that mix where we want to win the space race because China being dominant in space is a great concern of ours. It is the ultimate high ground. My son is in the United States military, in the Air Force. We know that if we don't have those GPS satellites in place, God forbid something breaks out, that we will not have a successful effort. So it is a push from the president. And remember one last thing. The president literally created the Space Force. I mean, that's his commitment to space. So I'm very confident that in the end, we'll find the right numbers to balance out between commercial space, let alone, of course, the military factors in space.
Speaking of cuts, the Financial Services Committee, you guys are slated to do your tax agenda on April 30th.
Correct.
Where are you going to find $1 billion in savings?
Well, I don't know if those who don't know the market, but the CFPB is a redundant system. We've had regulatory effects since the 1930s after the start of the Great Depression. We know that the banks are regulated not just by the Fed, but by the state. We have plenty of oversight on banks. What we want to see, and the great thing is every person in this room knows, there is real competition among banks. If you don't like your banks, there's plenty of others to go to work with. CFPB is just a government entity that has kind of outlived its usefulness. And what I dislike about it most as a former college professor teaching U.S. history, constitutional history, is that the CFPB is not overseen by the Congress, it's overseen by the Fed. And that's not right. We have to have this balance where we have sufficient oversight. CFPB, in my opinion, is not there. The adjustments that we want to make will not affect their general mission, but we are going to find savings there because there's plenty of money there because it's currently funded by the Fed, not by the Congress.
Can you be specific about what money you guys are targeting?
Yeah. I think what we're going to look at is that at this point, we want to make it where it's approximately $1 billion, it might even be more in the end, where the CFPB is getting so much money from the Fed, we want to reduce that percentage from roughly now it's about 12% down to 5%, and that will bring that $1 billion in savings. But we all recognize that the real savings is going to be from Medicaid and other programs where you want to make it where you want to, in Medicaid, look, there are vulnerable people out there who are disabled and or in nursing homes. That is the mission of Medicaid, let alone pregnant women. But what we don't want to see people on Medicaid are people who are illegal aliens, people who don't truly qualify, meaning like anything else, you have a means test for any government program, that's just common sense. And if you're an able-bodied person, you need to be into the workforce because that's how we save Medicaid. I'm a compassionate Republican in the idea that there is a role for government. I'm not an anarchist, let alone a libertarian. We have a responsibility to take care of our most vulnerable, but we're putting those people in jeopardy when illegals, people who truly don't qualify, or able-bodied Americans are preying on this system and taking from a system that is desperately needed by so many Americans.
I can see the headlines now. Haradopoulos cuts Medicaid. So let's clarify.
I am going to cut Medicaid from folks who should not be receiving it. Those are illegal aliens. Those are people who lie on their forms or aren't doing income checks. And those are people who are able-bodied and can go out in the workforce. That saves the system for people who are truly in need. Pregnant women, people who are in nursing homes, and of course the disabled. That's who we need to provide that safety net for, because they're in a very difficult situation.
Congressman, thank you so much for doing this.
Well, my pleasure.
Really
Thank you so
appreciate it.
much. Have a great day, y'all.
Please welcome Paul Griggs, U.S. Senior Partner at PwC, and Andrew Edgecliffe Johnson, CEO Editor at Semaphore.
Thank you, and Paul, welcome to the World Economy Summit.
Thank you.
Great to have you here. You have spent, I believe, nearly 30 years at
Almost,
PwC?
yeah. 28, 29 years.
And last year, 4,000 of your colleagues elected you U.S. Senior Partner. Before this role, you've been Vice Chair of U.S. Markets, you've led the Banking and Capital Markets practice, and you've sponsored the strategy that's upskilling PwC's people on AI, so I want to get to that. But you and I last met in person in Davos, and you spent a lot of time with a lot of clients. What's changed most for them since then?
Oh, it's a great question. So much has changed, and at the same time, I'd say that so much is still the same. Yes, if we walked it back, 3 months, there was certainly unbridled optimism coming out of Davos. But the topics that were being discussed there are still the topics that are being discussed now. We see our clients hyper-focused on the macro markets. They're focused on tariffs, they're focused on trades, they're focused on regulatory, they're focused on ensuring that they are preparing for change and therefore running scenarios upon scenarios to best position their firms for today and also for tomorrow. We're seeing AI still be at the top of the list. Companies that don't want to be caught from behind and be one that second guesses why they didn't invest more in the technology and the people and how they're deploying the technologies and the opportunities through their businesses, through their workflows and what they are putting into production in their product suite. We continue to see conversations around portfolios and rationalization of portfolios and opportunities in portfolios. And yes, do companies want a bit more stability to really pull forward deal activity into the marketplace? For sure. But it's those topics, Andrew. It's the same topics. Perhaps the order of those have changed, over the last 3 months.
Would you say the uncertainty is making people pause, hold off, sit on their hands rather than act?
Certainly is a slowing of decision making, but I'd say an acceleration of thoughtful and intentional planning. What does it mean for my supply chain? How would I shift my supply chain in certain territories if I chose to shift my supply chain? What do those duties mean for the business and the margins that I produce? What does it mean for the business that I conduct? And again, the shape of the components of my business today, and are there opportunities either to divest, or for that matter, do I have substantial free cash flow and reasonable leverage to take advantage of the uncertainty in this marketplace? So yes, for sure, slowing things down, but as it relates to core fundamentals of where people feel that they need to spend money on their workforce, on emerging technologies and AI, we continue to see quite a bit of that.
What do they need you most for right now? What are they coming to PwC specifically for?
Help to see patterns and inflection points and what's around the corner. Look, the benefit that a professional services firm has, if you think about the volume of clients that we serve, is you get to sit in a lot of rooms and listen to a lot of people across industries and understand and make connections to what is similar, what is certain, what is thematic, what enables decision making for one's business. So our clients first want help understanding and running those scenarios. They want help building the infrastructure and the capabilities and the governance routines around AI. They want our help thinking about their workforce, not just workforce contraction, but rather how to manage and best manage the workforce balance sheet. Where are they spending money on their people? Is that good money? How are they training and developing their talent? They're preparing for, what are they going to do when the deal market does open? Right. Are they an active buyer? Are they continuing to position for things that they may be looking to exit? Is the pricing right? They're talking to us about sustainability and continuing to think about sustainability less as responding to costs and regulatory requirements, but more as a creator of value or an opportunity of value. So it's those topics.
Just a brief one on deals. I mean, this was a great theme three months ago. Everybody was talking about animal spirits. The expectation was we were going to see an extraordinary kind of unlocking of deal activity. When do you think that window does open?
Listen, I'm an optimist, so you have to certainly appreciate that. And if you looked at our deals backlog, and certainly, even the conversations that we're in today with so many clients, the backlog is still healthy. Do I think it's pushed out to quarter or two? I do. But I, again, feel like you have, amidst the uncertainty as CEOs, as companies have absorbed the wave of this initial change, you have executives, boards, companies that are antsy to transact, and a bit of stability will certainly help us to do so.
So let's get into what you're saying on AI. Do you think all this uncertainty accelerates your clients' adoption of AI? There is a thesis that, okay, this is the thing we really need to save a lot of money, to be a lot more efficient. This is the moment the penny drops.
Look, I will tell you the fuel is on the fire as it relates to AI. To me, this is now kind of table stakes as it relates to investments. And so, yes, if you think about the work that we do, we are working with more than half of the Fortune 500 driving AI into their business processes, into their workflows. Think, airlines, we're looking at crew management systems and dissecting and rebuilding and ensuring that it speeds up the processes by which crews get to planes and planes get in the air. If you think hospitality, we're helping companies reevaluate and standardize how they ensure the brand stability of what they do across their various locations and franchisees. If you look at global healthcare centers and operations, we're spending time in clinical workflows and operational plot processes, leveraging the technology to put rich and meaningful and decision useful data in the hands of doctors and nurses and healthcare providers. If you think technology companies, and for that matter, I'd say any company with a significant customer service element to what they do, it's either digitizing, putting agents in call centers and customer contact centers to cut down call times, to improve the customer experience, to accelerate the effectiveness of the engagement with customers. And so, there's gas on the fire of AI, and that has not slowed. And I'd say that in my mind, or I should say from my judgment, that is what I said earlier. It's no one wants to get caught from behind. Right. No one wants to see the competitor lead the way, or the challenger show up in a business that has historically been so dependent upon scale, where now speed matters, innovation matters, scale matters a little bit less.
What are your clients telling you about the kind of returns they're seeing on their early investments in AI, and whether that makes them willing to really double down on spending?
It's the $1 million question, and
I hope they're spending more than that.
There's a lot more than $1 million in terms of the savings. It's easy at the moment to measure productivity savings, and certainly I'll call it costs out of processes. So if you take time that elements of even some of the examples I've shared have historically required versus what they require today, do you see productivity in certain instances at 30, 40, 50, 60%, 70%? You do. What companies are continuing to struggle with is, how do I measure, as I drop AI and technologies into my product suite, how am I measuring the revenue returns? Is it changing price? Is it changing the stickiness of a customer? Is it enabling me to cross-sell my product suite? Therefore, does it have brand value that's a bit intangible, but that by definition is improving the revenue contribution to the firm? So I'd call it the productivity measures, and running pilots and identifying what that might mean for strategic workforce planning and for the cost of delivering and running businesses, easier to measure, and companies see real returns. A little bit harder as you drop it into products and solutions that by definition is an added feature. It's driving brand value and brand recognition, and therefore the productivity of your business.
So they're looking to you to guide them through this. How are you actually using AI to best effect internally?
If you think about our business, we really trade in three businesses. We have a a big trust business, which is financial statement assurance and non-financial statement assurance services. We have a tax business that's everything from large-scale tax compliance to tax advice and planning and consulting, and then we have an end-to-end consulting business, strategy deals, business transformation, technology transformation, cyber risk controls. A couple of things. First, we put tools and technologies in the hands of our people very, very early. And I mean, think Copilot style features, think large language models. We built our own platform that effectively has the language models that sits underneath that allow our people to lean into and use them. But I'd still call that incremental change. So assets in hands, tools in hands, accelerators in hands, that's incremental change. What we've also done, though, is taken elements of our businesses, and we've run, red teams, SWAT teams, Navy SEAL style teams, SWAT teams that ultimately come in, take an element of a business process, cannibalize it, and determine how do we deliver it quicker, smarter, faster, more efficiently, more effectively, and then how do we measure the returns, enabling that to change the way we build those businesses and how we deliver those businesses externally. So we're thinking about it as, look, we need to transform our businesses at the same time that we're flying the plane, and that's certainly the mindset, and then creating the space to encourage the innovation, the exploration, to reward it in our people, because that effectively enables us to deliver for our clients.
So the people piece of this fascinates me, and it's clearly none of us woke up with AI skills 5 years ago. What have you found has been most effective in giving people the skills, in getting adoption going? Because I hear about a lot of workplaces where management is providing the tools, saying go use them, and then there's an active resistance, or is just people are just not ready. How have you actually trained people up and got that?
I'll give you a couple of reactions, Andrew. First, we are an outcomes-oriented firm, and if your outcome is contraction, then your input into the process is not going to be something that unlocks possibility and opportunity. If your outcome is change your business for the better, enable your clients to go further faster, drive your clients to the leading edge, well then now the outcome that you are seeking requires innovation and exploration and experimentation. And so first it's been, let's be clear on the outcomes. We see AI, emerging technologies, as a true unlock for opportunity, both for our own business, but certainly for the capital markets and what our clients will do in their own ecosystem. So that and that alone creates a mindset which says, well, number one, I'm going to explore because I'm being encouraged to explore. I'm being spotlighted when my exploration yields outcomes for clients or outcomes for this firm that are differentiated. And so it's creating the space, it's setting the tone, it's ensuring that the culture is directed towards opportunity, not limited to efficiency. And in the process, we're seeing amazing things from our people. I will tell you, you take folks that are first 5 years in their careers, and the speed of innovation, exploration, and discovery is fantastic. And so in some of these sprint and pilot teams, we're putting some of our less experienced resources, alongside those teams just to challenge the historical assumptions, and it's a difference maker.
All right. You mentioned the work on sustainability you're doing. Are clients as committed to it as they were, or does all this uncertainty make some of them think, this is less urgent, or it's more of a cost than it used to be?
Well, if you go back, we ran a recent decarb report study, and if my memory serves, something like 4% of participants in that survey reconfirmed their current commitments, or frankly, the acceleration of commitments. Again, not for compliance purposes or to navigate and manage the costs of compliance, but rather viewing sustainability as a true value creator. The report gave a statistic which I found particularly interesting, and it said that companies that had put sustainability attributes into their product suite had experienced revenue opportunities increasing 6 to 25%. So what we're seeing is, to answer your question, we're seeing continued commitment around sustainability, climate investments, companies are seeing meaningful returns on those investments when they're putting sustainability attributes into what they do, there remains significant opportunities and initiatives expressed, by this country that put, $1 trillion, to be spent inside the innovation that happens in this country around this topic. And it certainly is, a topic that continues to attract capital investment. And so we have, a one firm sustainability business that, crosses all three of those, core businesses that I described. And that business is very, very, very busy and growing at meaningful rates over the last few years.
All right. We're all signing up for the SWAT teams now. Paul, thank you very much.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Please welcome John Santora, CEO of WeWork, and Liz Clayman, anchor of the Clayman Countdown on Fox Business Network.
First of all, thanks to Semaphore for putting together what I think is going to be the premier conference now with CEOs. I mean, look at the names that have been in front of you guys. So this is going to be a fascinating one because I think we can all agree that America absolutely loves hoisting the underdog up onto a pedestal and then tearing it down. But if there's anything they love more than tearing something down off a pedestal, it is a great second act. And John Santora is the guy who's giving WeWork a second act.
Well, thank you, Liz.
You are restarting a startup. So does that mean with WeWork, no more kombucha in the fridge?
No, but there is no more beer taps or anything in the U.S. But we got a little bit of that outside the U.S.
Well, yeah, you're completely refurbishing and changing the outlook here. But I just want to start with this. Today, you've got 45 million square feet of office space in something like 37 different countries. But when you came aboard, formerly as being in real estate for 47 years?
47 years with Cushman & Wakefield.
This was a company in despair and distress, I think you could say. There was a messed up IPO, the founder, Adam Neumann, out. Why take on this job?
Well, a couple of reasons, Liz. First of all, as you said, great brand, great idea, an important part, and I found this out, an important part of the real estate community and real estate for corporations we all know about the entrepreneur, right? The ones, the twos, the startup companies, important part of that, and that will always be part of our culture. But you look at that whole cycle, we provide real estate for 47 of the Fortune 100s. Being at this conference from last night, I can't tell you how many people have come up to me and said, we love your space. We're in 7 locations around the world with you. We're in 15 locations around the world. We are an important part of companies in their real estate footprint.
And you've got bigwigs here.
Yes,
I mean, you're talking about people coming up to you from this conference, and can you give me an example of how somebody here is using it?
I had a classic one this morning. Gentleman from India who's part of a leader in a big tech firm said to me he was visiting New York last week with his family, his kids. They were in a hotel room and they had to do a 5 a.m. call. So he said, I know there's a WeWork around the corner, opened up his app. At 5 a.m., a few minutes to 5, he went there and he had his black card that allows him access anywhere in the world. And he went up to the building. Now he's assuming, can I really get in? It's 5 o'clock in the morning. Put it against the door opened, got on the elevator, went up to our floor, and he said, it just worked. And I love that line, it just works.
WeWork, it just works.
Right.
Okay, there's your new tagline here. Okay, so you walk in on day one, you already know that this was a company groaning under how much debt? How many billions in debt?
So the beauty of when I came in, we were debt-free at that point. As we exited bankruptcy, we were debt-free. And there was $4 or $5 billion of debt gone during that process. The debt was even greater prior to that. And completely restructured. And as I came in, we were finishing the restructure of the portfolio and aligning our company with that new portfolio.
Okay, new portfolio, but what did you look at? Because anybody who had been in the sort of old WeWork was, a few neon signs and a very hipster atmosphere. You looked at that and said what?
So that's our early generation. Today, as we're investing $100 million this year alone in just refreshing those spaces. The pool tables are gone, the foosball, and there's the beer taps and so forth. And it's both a warm, inviting environment, and many of you have probably been in WeWork somewhere around the world. There's that community space with the barista going and just that kind of little excitement that goes with that. Cappuccino's being made and the noise, and there's a little music in the background. But people can come together in that community space, but then they flow out to their offices.
Can they bespoke it? If they are going to have an important meeting somewhere in one of your multiple countries, can they call ahead and say, we need some of our signage in there? Like, how do you differentiate yourself from the Reguses of the world, which will rent people for an hour, half day, full day, several months, and they too claim that they'll do bespoke?
Well, but we're a bespoke company, right? Everything that we do is around flexibility, creativity, and just our whole community concept of being warm, welcoming. So yes, we'll bespoke anything, but we also do that on the short, mid, and long term. So for major clients, and there's been a lot written about the deals we've done with Amazon over the last couple of months, those spaces are Amazon spaces, and we run them, but we take them down on behalf of Amazon and they occupy them. We do that with many of the big firms around the world. Sometimes they just don't want to have a lease in Sao Paulo or in some of these countries. In other cases, it's short term, and we can move quickly and get them set up. Whereas if it has to go through, no offense to any attorneys, but it has to go through their attorneys and all their corporate structure, it becomes a much bigger issue, maybe even at a board level to take down space. Whereas, for us, they're just doing a licensing agreement with us.
The back-to-work mandates, we know that Amazon, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, Dell, they said, get back to work. However, office space in some of the bigger cities is still, the vacancies are still very, very high. Who is filling your office space, and does it make financial sense? And you've got business leaders watching right now saying, wait a minute, why am I leasing space in different cities? Make your pitch to them.
So if we look at it and just take today's environment with all the uncertainty around tariffs and what's happening, who's prepared to commit to a 10 or a 15-year lease with $50 or $100 million spend? I know that from my perspective, I have to do it. It's part of what I do. But for most of our clients, there's that pause. And what do you do? Is your lease is coming due or that type of opportunity? The other thing is, do we really know how many people are going to be in the office? Right? We don't. We don't know whether it's going to be 3 days a week, 4 days a week, 5 days a week. We can mandate it, or firms mandate it. But by taking that short-term look at it, do 2 years with us, do 3 years with us. At that point, you know where your business is heading.
You mentioned the gentleman who had a black card.
Yeah.
What does that cost to have, listen, all you can eat in any city, WeWork, show up at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning. What does that cost?
It costs $300 to $400 a month. So for $300 or $400 a month, you get to use space anywhere in the world. A traveling executive, we were looking, my head of communications and I were looking to get on a video call here. There's no place to get on a video call here right now, right? But down the block is a WeWork. Take your black card, bang, get in there, turn on the screen, and you're done.
And how is that working? Are you seeing the sales of those cards increasing?
The sales of the cards are increasing. Our sales are increasing significantly since I've taken over and since we've exited bankruptcy. Today we're a private firm. We have no debt. We have the money to invest in our portfolio and our members, and we're also investing in our people. We've just engaged the Ritz-Carlton to train and retrain a lot of our people for when you walk in and get greeted and how your services are handled. I'm
going to bring up a name that may trigger, I doubt it will trigger you, but Adam Neumann, the former founder, some would say destroyer of WeWork. That, when he was running the company, that company had a valuation closer leading up to the IPO of something like $47 billion. Once again, this is a cautionary tale. Wall Street gets glittery-eyed, and they simply throw down and leave behind all rational thought, and they back companies, and then it turns into a disaster. How do you sort of restart the image from that to what you foresee now?
So I think the whole image is, again, being a private company, we're a maturing company. You see that in our spaces, you see that in our people, you see it in the leadership. I'm grounded in real estate, 47 years in real estate. This is a real estate company. When I first had the conversation about coming over, I said to the chairman of the board, I said, you know, you just bought a real estate company. And he laughed and he says, the first time anybody's called it that. I said, yeah, it's a
Well,
real
they tried to present it
It
as
was a technology
tech
company.
Yeah.
We provide some great technology. Technology is really important to us and to our members to know how many people occupy and the flow within the space, but we're not a technology company, we're real estate.
How many in the audience, show of hands, have ever been in a WeWork? Wow.
60
For those of
at
you who are
least
watching on streaming, what, 2/3 of this audience?
2/3 of the room. Thank you for that.
Well, keeping it with Adam Newman, he has actually started a new company called Flow, and he's doing residential real estate. I don't even know what's going on there, but I do know that he is adding, sort of bolting on, workflow, he's calling it, which is rental space attached to residences where people can rent it and do business. Do you see that as a threat in any way, shape, or form? Or yet another competitor?
I wish him luck. He's not at a competitor status at any point right now. He could be in the future, but who knows? But we're focused on delivering for our members and around the world, our clients around the world.
So
I'm not looking back, we're going ahead.
Who is the biggest name besides Amazon that is leasing space and continues to add more to their WeWork portfolio?
I will tell you, if you look at every top technology company, any one of the ones that we see on the news and the stock market each and every day, every AI firm, we have 220 AI firms within our spaces around the world.
AI.
And so we're going to have lots of conversations around that over the next day and a half, but they're in our spaces, every one of them. There was an article yesterday, I think Forbes came out with its 50 top AI firms. So I quickly had our people run the names, and 24 of the 50 are in our spaces.
Okay, you got some
Just
runway
amazing.
there.
Yeah,
Hit
that's
the
right. I got some
phones.
room. I don't know what's the matter with the other 26. We'll figure that out.
You're spending something like $80 to $90 million this year on updating the spaces. You're calling it a refresh.
Refresh.
What will change? What will they look like?
The color schemes, the furniture itself. We'll invest in, more screens, more technology in some of the conference rooms and so forth. Just as you would refresh anything, right, or redesign it. So softer colors, not all the bright stuff, better furniture.
The common thread in a lot of these interviews here at this conference has been the tariffs and the uncertainty. What do you hear from your customers, and are you seeing any market changes since April 2nd when President Trump slapped the tariffs on what he called Liberation Day, and since then has, in fits and starts, paused them depending on which hour he decides?
So the world business investments are all on a pause right now until you determine what impact it's going to have on your company, on your supply chain, on the cost of all of that. So we're seeing companies that are in our spaces today extend, companies that haven't been in our spaces before talking to us about, can you fill the short-term gap for us? What can you do for the next 6 months? And surprising, and this is really surprising to me, large Fortune 500 companies, Fortune 100 companies asking us to put the capital in to build out special spaces on their behalf, which is incredible. I said, my capital is kind of expensive compared to yours, but it's a short term and they handle it differently on their finances.
Very interesting, and I think that maybe the crucible that comes through all of this is simply that if people can't see 2 weeks out, let alone 5 hours out because of the messaging coming from the White House, why sign a long-term lease with an office building?
Right, right. I mean, that's the thing. Do you need an office? Do you need to have long-term leases? Some of your stuff, your headquarters, in markets that you know you'll always be in. But in those other markets, why make that long-term commitment, commit all the
John,
capital?
your good friends at Cushman
I know.
Wakefield are probably annoyed with that message.
Yeah, they're helping us. The broker community, Cushman & Wakefield, and all the other brokerage community are important to us as well because they bring us those clients.
What is the one thing in these last 30 seconds that you would like to impart to this audience right now?
It's a new WeWork. We're a maturing company. We're a private company. We're debt-free. We're investing in our spaces and our people and just to make a great place for our members to be.
And lattes and cappuccinos are still in play.
Yes, they are, absolutely.
Not the kombucha, but bring your own. Great to have you.
Liz,
thank you so
thank you.
much. John
Absolute
Santora
pleasure.
of WeWork.
Yeah.
Please welcome Raj Subramaniam, President and CEO of FedEx Corporation, and Andrew Edgecliffe Johnson, CEO Editor at Semaphore.
Raj,
Andrew,
welcome to the World Economy Summit. Thank you very much for being with us.
thank you. Thank you for having me here.
So, you've had a career at FedEx lasting more than 30 years.
Yes.
You're only its second CEO. You succeeded the founder, Fred Smith, just a few years ago, 2022. You're based in Memphis, Tennessee, but FedEx likes to say that you connect 99% of the world's GDP. So, pretty appropriate guest for the World Economy Summit. Thank you. You're moving, I believe, 16 million packages a day?
Yes.
Almost $2 trillion worth of goods
Yes.
a year.
Yes.
Easy time to do that?
Well, thank you again for having me on this conference, and good to see you again, Andrew. But yes, I think the networks that we have built over the last 52 years, the physical networks that we have built, is really substantial. And you just said it, we connect 99% of the world's commerce. You can take a package from any one part of the world to get it to any other part of the world in a small amount of time. That's what we got. When we talk about telephone networks, everyone gets it, moving bits and bytes. But it's somehow difficult for moving atoms is a whole different thing, and that's what we have built over the 52 years. And there are only 2 or 3 companies who can do that. So as the world changes and the supply chain patterns evolve, the fact that we have a scaled global network stands us in good stead because these patterns are going to now change in ways that haven't done so in the last few years at least. And so we'll have a catbird's seat on how these supply chains evolve. We are literally a referendum on global supply chains for high-value trade.
You have this unique lens on the global economy. You are this great global bellwether. So can you give us a snapshot before we dive into the bigger conversation on innovation and transformation at FedEx?
Yeah.
Of what are you actually seeing at the macro level right now? What's changing?
Well, I would talk about 3 things. One is that the overall demand level, it's something we have to watch very, very carefully because things are changing by the minute. And so it's very difficult to predict at this point, but we will watch the overall demand very carefully as you see the global patterns shift. And because of the fact that we have a scaled global network and as the supply chains evolve, the fact that our network is already connected stands us in good stead. For example, I was in our headquarters of Latin America just last week or so, and in 27 countries in the region are seeing inbound traffic going up. We don't have to do anything. We're already there. So we are here, there, and everywhere as the traffic patterns evolve. The scaled infrastructure is very helpful. The second part of it is operational. And our team has done a remarkable job in getting ready to deal with the increasing operational complexities as some of these regulations change. And the need of the hour is advanced calculus, and a lot of people can do basic math. We can do advanced calculus. The other part of it is that just by the virtue of our doing business, from every country to every other country for every commodity, we have the classification information. That's what we needed to do over the years. And the value of those insights, the clearance platform that now we are building, is now raised significantly.
Is that actively becoming more of a business?
Absolutely,
Right.
it is, and a lot of customers are now working with us because it is now increasingly a requirement. So I think that's those are the things that we are seeing, and it's changing and evolving every single day. But our teams have done a remarkable job, especially building on the things that we have that we have already the foundation has been laid. That's been very helpful.
So just to dig in on those operational complexities you mentioned, what is the specific tariff impact on FedEx right now? What do you see?
Yeah, that's why on the overall demand side, we'll manage through as we see. These are changing by the minute. So far, things are okay, but I can't tell you what happens next week.
Okay, but you're not seeing some goods held up that would otherwise be moving through the network?
Our system is working fine right now.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So look, in this 30-plus year career you've had at FedEx, you've been through a few operational complexities, let's say, the pandemic, obviously,
Yes.
First and foremost. Can you put today's disruption into context, based on what you've seen the network go through over those years? Is this something of a different order, or is it actually in the same vein?
Well, I think, if you think about it, when in the pandemic, you had this visual of hundreds of ships outside the Los Angeles port, and that's how the supply chains became a household word, so to speak. And I think, obviously that's not what's going to happen now. I think the question is going to be, whether the infrastructure is available to now actually physically clear all these packages and freight that's going to come across from different parts of the world, and so it's going to be a very different dynamic. But the interesting thing about all this was, prior to the pandemic, supply chains, nobody really talked about it or cared really. It was the domain of the procurement manager, maybe the CFO at best. Today, supply chains are boardroom conversation, every boardroom. And so we have evolved our mission to make supply chains smarter for everyone. And we can do it because both the incredible physical network that we have painstakingly built over the last 52 years and the insights of the supply chain that we now have gathered through the data, because we're literally sitting on high-value supply chain information. Like you just said, we move $2 trillion worth of commerce every single year through our system, connecting 3 million shippers and 225 million consumers. And we are in the center of that ecosystem. So we have a lot of insights that we are now going to capitalize on.
What have you had to do within the organization to kind of prepare FedEx for this world where disruption seems to be the norm? We go through these periodic crises in supply chains, different patches of the map each time.
Yeah, no, we started this journey back in 2020, and honestly, it was just about the time of the pandemic, not because of it. And because we realized the value of the data and the insights that FedEx has got. And so we started organizing and engineering the data about, and really over the period of time created a digital twin for FedEx. And that work we did not anticipate either the pandemic or what's happening right now or the advent of AI, none of this. But having this built out over the last 5 years, and with now application of machine learning, deep learning models, and AI and Gen AI, and of course now the increasing disruption, this becomes very, very handy. And so in some ways I'm fortunate that we began the journey, but now we are sitting on a very, very valuable set of assets, including the physical and the digital.
Can you turn disruption into a spur for innovation? Is this an opportunity actually to galvanize the organization, get change moving at a faster pace?
100%. That's in fact, during COVID, that was a spur for innovation. Now I think the requirements for customers who have, and I'll tell you an example. There was this customer who was making neon signs. They had 200 versions of neon signs. Before this, they Googled up the classification code, put it on those 200 different types, send it across, and it cleared. Well, starting next week, they're going to need 200 different classification codes to get that across. And that only we can provide.
Right.
And so we have to absolutely spur innovation, but the idea is to make it so seamless for our customers that we integrate them on a platform basis and to make sure that the business continues even in this complex environment. That's why I made the comment that before you could get away with basic algebra, and now you need advanced calculus, and we can do advanced calculus.
So give us the high-level view of what is the transformation strategy you're pushing at this 50-plus-year-old company now?
Yeah, I think the vision was to make supply chain smarter for everyone. I thought that was timely given everything that's going on, and that happens supply chain smarter for us first of all, our customers, and then consumers. And the foundation of that strategy, first of all, is our physical network. That is very, very important. Everything else happens only because the fact that we connect world from one to the other every single day. So that's a given, and that's a big moat. Nobody else has got that kind of extensive network. So once you have that, then we are able to, we went through a big structural cost reduction program over the last 3 years. Our cost base was $87 billion 3 years ago. Now it's more like 81 in a period of inflation. That, a lot of those changes, majority happened because of technological changes that we've made.
Where would you say that has come out?
Well, it's because of the technology that we use in our operational efficiency, making our supply chain smarter. Okay. Then our customer supply chain, we are now integrating our data directly with several big customers so that we are right behind their website, so to speak. Somebody orders something on their website, then we are able to pass on intelligence to say where you should fulfill that traffic from to get that traffic to you by Tuesday. And it takes into account weather conditions, traffic patterns. It's a deep learning model that continues to learn every single day. At the same token, that same infrastructure then allows the consumer, the final, you, me, everybody who buys these goods, much more predictability in when that package is going to arrive. So that's important for end consumer. It's important for healthcare companies. I mean, it's just it's a workflow tool. So we are evolved into a different space over the last few years, and we're just getting started, by the way.
When we met over a coffee in New York, you sort of left me with an image in my mind of the journey of a parcel being fundamentally transformed by data, by automation, by AI, everything from, as you say, how you sit behind the, let's say, the retailer's website, the customer's website, to how you think about how many boxes you can fit into the back of a van.
Yes.
How fundamentally has the journey of a parcel changed?
Yes, that's exactly right. From the point of view, that same parcel that you're talking about, so from our point of view, how do we utilize our assets the most efficiently? From a customer's point of view, make sure that package is be departing from the right fulfillment center to arrive at the most efficiency. From the consumer side, extraordinary level of prediction. So what we have essentially done is taken this complex physical network, build a digital twin, and then on top of that, now we're applying all these latest in AI and ML tools, and to be able to do more things to make supply chain smarter. So it's, again, like I said, we have the infrastructure built out. We're beginning in the early stages of the journey. This I think is exciting as we move forward, especially in a complex world that's getting more frictionful.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about AI, talked a lot about automation and other technology. Where are you actually spending the money on technology right now? What's taking up most of your technology budget?
So I think we are radically simplifying our technology. One of the things that I didn't mention as part of our history for FedEx, we are moved to an operate independently model that was in place for many years for a good reason. At the turn of the century, in the ground parcel business, this is not a well-known fact actually, that the ground parcel business, our market share was 10%. Our competition was 80. We were a 70-point market share gap, and now that market share gap is 7. And so this journey happened because of the operating model that we have. But with the advent of e-commerce, we needed to fundamentally rationalize our operating structure, and so we moved to what we call One FedEx. And the reason I went through that is to tell you is that we're going through a journey of radical simplification of our technology infrastructure. So that's what we are doing as well. While we're building these new things, we're radically simplifying our technology infrastructure. And we're also, putting in place structures for, some of the automation, robotics, whether it is, if you look at some of our hubs today, I mean, packages come in through one end of the hub and go out. It's a huge facility, come out the other side in a matter of minutes. And, it's completely automated. And, but then there's truck loading and truck unloading. So we are even working with robotics to see if there's opportunities. It's a very complex problem. Can you imagine trying to figure out how to load a truck?
It's like Jenga.
It's
really,
very much like that. So
three-dimensional.
So there's a lot of work that we're doing in all these fronts right now.
So what do these innovations mean for your 500,000 people? Is it?
Yes. So all these innovations are it's make their job easier. And some of the harder, difficult things to do, if we can have a machine to do it, then that just makes the job easier. So we think about this as working together to make our team members' job more productive and easier.
What have you learned over 30 years about how to lead a team of 500,000 people?
Well, this is it's a very important thing. This is why this is why I love FedEx, and this is why I stayed there for so many years. And we are a people-centric company. We are in a service business, and I think that the difference between our team members just doing the job, just enough not to get fired, versus going above and beyond the call of duty to deliver an outstanding experience, that's the difference between failure and success. And so culture is very, very important. And I travel the world constantly, and I lived in different parts of the world. It's kind of interesting. People ask me the question, how difficult is it to manage this widespread, and manage the culture? For me, the great news is the language of the country may be different, but the language of FedEx is really the same. And that's something we have built over time, bit by bit, and we're very proud of it. And it's just, it's an inherent competitive advantage that translates into better customer experience.
So I mentioned Fred Smith earlier. He's still chair of FedEx. Yes. Succeeding a founder is not always easy. How have you put your stamp on the company while also respecting that legacy and his contributions?
Yeah, no, I think it's just phenomenal. I mean, taking over a CEO is stressful in itself, but taking it over from a founder is a whole other level. Not because of anything else, because of the accountability. And so I feel incredibly privileged, incredibly grateful that Fred, entrusted me with this responsibility, but also the weight on my shoulders is also that much higher. Because I say often that I can see far because I'm standing on the shoulder of a giant, I think quoting Galileo. And that's been the case. Working with Fred has been an incredible experience. It's not only CEO school, it's perspective on the world and the history or geography or business in general. It's just an incredible learning experience. So we have formed a good team over many years. It was the right time for transition, especially as we move into this digital journey, and I think it's worked out just great.
All right. Well, Raj, we started by saying that you cover 99% of the world's GDP. I hope by the time we see you back here next year, you've got the other 1%.
We only don't go to the places we are not allowed to go by law. Unless the law changes, I can't help you.
A lot is changing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.
welcome Kate Johnson, CEO of Lumen, Michael Kasbar, CEO of World Connect, and Gina Chua, Executive Editor at Semaphore.
That's good. All right, great. Okay. So both of you are in businesses where AI is going to be making a fairly significant difference in terms of connectivity, in terms of energy, and so on. So I just wanted to maybe start off just by talking, well, I should probably, in case anybody doesn't know, and I hope they all do know, Lumen is a company that provides network connectivity. World Connect moves fuel around the world, but also gives energy advisory services for companies. So you both have really good insights into how the AI is going to be affecting both your businesses. And when we talk about AI, we often talk about data centers, and we talk about chips, and we talk about all the sexy stuff. And this is really kind of the core infrastructure and the core backbone. So maybe, Kate, you could just start by talking in terms of what are you seeing in terms of the needs change as AI has become much more of a business imperative.
Sure. So AI is the fastest diffusion technology in history of mankind, and the number one thing that AI needs most is data. And that data needs to sit somewhere, which is why there's such a pressing need to build more data center capacity. And we always talk about power, space, and water. What is frequently skipped is this notion of connecting the data centers. And when you think about using existing networks, the data centers of yesterday won't serve the needs of the AI economy tomorrow. They're not big enough, they're not fast enough, they're not secure enough. And so there is this once in a generation increase in demand for network services, both building new routes to connect new data centers, as well as significantly augmenting the existing routes with more sophisticated fiber solutions to push more information, more data through those constructs. But what's more is the way that these, the technology architectures to support the AI economy have developed. Telecom is the final frontier for digital transformation. Mm-hmm. It was very analog, it's very static, and so the need for building a digital platform on top of that physical infrastructure to make it easy for enterprises to move data anywhere, on-prem, at the edge, or between clouds, is of paramount importance. And as we know, AI is important for the country, for national security, for education, for healthcare, et cetera. And as you just said, this sort of boring old crusty critical infrastructure has now become critical infrastructure to maintain national competitiveness.
And how are we doing meeting that need?
So I think I'm cautiously optimistic that there's a profound recognition that we have to responsibly press the go fast button. And I think that means, reform from a regulatory perspective, from a permitting perspective, just to enable speed, because speed is strategy, particularly when it comes to building out the infrastructure required to support the development of AI.
Okay, I'm going to come back to that in a second, but let me turn to Michael. And I'm going to, with apologies, I'm going to digress for a second, just because obviously we're looking at the economic outlook, we're looking at tariffs. You, because World Connect supplies fuel to aviation, supplies fuel to the marine industry, you have this unique insight into what the demand looks like. We've seen a number of airlines already give profit warnings, or at least downgrades for the second quarter. I'd love to get your sense of what trends you're seeing in both in the aviation industry, through your lens of fuel supply, and in the marine and shipping industry through the lens of supplying those industries.
Sure. As it relates to aviation, I think it's fair to say that I'm sanguine. Okay. When you look at some of the announcements, that's mostly U.S.-centric, and certainly you're going to see some folks from different parts of the world may decide that they're not going to go to Florida, but they may end up going to Mexico or Bermuda. So When you give guidance, obviously you're putting something out there from a conservative perspective. You want to make sure that you're not in a bind there. That's, of course, the complexity of giving guidance. But certainly for our business, we're doing business in 200 countries and territories. So oftentimes those disruptions represent an opportunity for us because we do have great geographic diversification as well as end market diversification in terms of commercial, corporate, cargo, military. We basically supply really anything that flies. As it relates to the marine industry, that's perhaps a little bit different, in terms of inventory management and as it relates to tariffs. Whether your view in this uncertain marketplace is that you should buy inventory or maybe you should not, whether this is a temporary or permanent, is it a negotiating stance? And then the underlying economy. I think the consumer is still pretty strong, but there's hesitation. So I think that that one is a little bit different. Certainly the cruise industry is extremely robust. That's come back extremely strong. So once again, as it relates to our company, we're very diverse, and some of those crises are an opportunity for us.
Okay. So let's come back to sort of just general demand and supply for AI. And over the last several years, energy generation, certainly in this country, has been more or less flat, even as demand has grown. And now, of course, we're going to see this presumed spike in demand for energy, and that for all companies, whether or not you're an AI company or a data center, that brings on questions about cost, energy stability, and reliability. And you advise a lot of companies around thinking through their energy needs. I mean, what are the trends that you're seeing there, and what advice are you giving to companies? Well,
diversity breeds stability. I got a degree in environmental science a long time ago, and that's, I think, the first law of thermodynamics in terms of entropy. So we've always basically dealt with diverse solutions. There's lots of different ways to skin the cat, and if you look at this country, it's transmission grid. There's billions, I think $200 billion that have been announced through the regional transmission organizations, and that's still a drop in the bucket because your transmission in terms of generation where load is still a challenge. So DER, distributed energy resources, you're seeing power plants are being built and data centers have excess demand to the power plants that are being built today. So you've got a real challenge, and now you're looking at getting permitting for co-locating generation where AI centers are. That's another form of distributed energy resources. Some of the smaller and medium-sized companies, we advise on on-site solar. That basically insulates them from wholesale price movements, some non-commodity prices in terms of fees and taxes. So it runs the full gamut. We started our business as knowledge workers, and as we gained knowledge, we started to execute and deal with implementation. And we do that across the board with anyone that's consuming energy.
So Michael talked about permitting reform, which we all know about, and the issue with transmission grid. What are the issues on the networking side?
We have a lot of the same issues in terms of permitting reform, right? Because when we're expanding the internet at large, that requires building conduit in the ground and stringing that up with fiber. And I think we've made significant progress working on existing routes and having the ability to go work on those routes to upgrade the fiber that's in there and bring fundamentally increased capacity. What we're still struggling with is when we're building new routes. It is very difficult. And like I said, the responsible Go Fast button, really, it's complicated because it's at the state and local level, but there could certainly be work at the federal level to expedite it. And it's across 50 states, right? So when you're having everyone's a snowflake in terms of the way that they interpret policy, and that can be very complex for an enterprise that's trying to build critical infrastructure to help the world go faster, or the U.S. go faster in the race for AI. We have one state that had very complex rules in terms of access in certain markets and local municipalities. And we were trying to very quickly build a route to make the internet more accessible so that some more kids could participate in education. And we were trying to meet some deadlines. And it turned out to boil down to the relationship that we had with the state and local officials was critical to unlocking the market and allowing us access to be able to do the work through the weekends and things like that. And when you recognize that the difference maker of delivering that on time, that project, was really about a fundamental just one-to-one relationship, and you got to do that 50 times at the state level, and then how many local municipalities, we really need help with, with a shot clock that enables pace for this build-out.
Well, this is really kind of, the Ezra Klein abundance agenda, isn't it? So what should be done? What should the federal government do on this?
Well, I mean, I think we're seeing great strides with the FCC in terms of policy and regulation and looking at antiquated things that are in place that were intended to make life better for citizens that are actually now working against us, given where we are from a technology perspective. And we're also seeing the administration start to think about what does a critical infrastructure bill look like, for AI, and so, like I said before, we're cautiously optimistic that the right things are being done. I just hope we get to resolution quickly, and then we figure out a way to copy paste that to be able to move fast in all those local municipalities.
I think the force multiplier of an aligned regulatory framework is very powerful, and while there's, a lot of seemingly disruptive things being thrown into the marketplace, permitting reform could be the greatest impact, of this period that we're in. So I'm optimistic that smarter minds will prevail in terms of bringing this to bear.
There certainly seems to be recognition that it's a problem and there's momentum, so we're
on both sides of the
hopeful. Yeah.
And it is
Definitely.
national security without question.
100%.
So the notion of conventional, digital, renewable, renewables are great, but getting the scalability and the cost, innovation is tremendous. I mean, solar and storage is some of the lowest cost, but scaling it, you'd have to cover planet Earth to be able to do it. But it's a diverse energy diet, as my daughter said, Dad, eat the rainbow. So it's really just getting all of those together, and you've got to be an energy locavore. So obviously the hyperscalers are going to dominate, but the impact on cost, is not going to be immaterial. So I think that it is going to be all of the above, and I'm optimistic that there's a lot of factors at play that give reasons for us to be optimistic.
In terms of the energy diet, as you say, how much pressure is there on renewables, on green energy, sustainable versus, traditional, I guess, energy?
Well, we know the political dynamic, but it's not a religion; it's a business. The economics are going to drive it. Certainly, companies that have the wherewithal and the P&L to say this is what we're going to do, you've got a lot of momentum there. So high margin businesses that are recognizing and taking a long-term view are certainly propelling and investing and stimulating. We've invested, back in 2011, we invested in sustainable aviation fuel. Nobody was talking about it then. We started to stream in 2016. Now you've got mandates that are coming through, and you're getting more of that. There was just a milestone legislation by the IMO, International Maritime Organization, in terms of a levy on marine fuel and tax and a cap and trade regimen. It'll take 2 years to figure out how you're going to do it all, but that was really a milestone. So it's the .com of sustainability, without question. So it's never going away. It's here to stay. The economics will rule. I mean, if it's red, it's not green, with the exception of folks that can afford it.
I think the key there is that these are multivariable equations, and diversity is key. It's true for your business, it's true for our business, where it's not one technology, it's a blend of multiple technologies to support diversification of these data centers geographically, right? And what's the optimal outcome? That's going to be a bunch of different solutions coming in to provide that data point. When you regulate and say it's got to be one or the other, you start to lose innovation, you start to lose the partnership across the ecosystem, and that's a bad outcome overall for the country. I think it's the same when we're talking about technology. It's a blend of technologies, satellite, fixed wireless, 5G, et cetera, in combination with fiber. They all have to be available in order for the ecosystem to work properly. And so it's never one answer, it's usually multiple answers.
Do customers care? I mean, obviously I understand from a business point of view that, you've got mandates in some cases, but in other cases, as you say, it's a business decision.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it is just around reliability and so on, but do customers care?
Customers care deeply about figuring this thing out, and it's incredibly complex. And what we're seeing is they're relying upon us, as you and I were talking in the green room, Michael. Advisory becomes an integral part of the relationship with customers to help them get the right solution. So, there are multiple phases to the build out of critical infrastructure for the AI economy. I think we all saw the hyperscalers over the past 2 years go hard to the hoop in firing up data centers everywhere, and they need connectivity, they need energy solutions, et cetera. But that's just the start. Enterprises are starting to adopt AI to transform their business. They're starting, to help their workers be more productive. They're starting to transform functions to be more productive, and they're starting to reshape their business models. And that is complex enough, and that's where they want to spend their time. They don't want to figure out, okay, what do I have to do to, get connected, and what's the best and optimal energy solution? They don't want to be experts in those spaces. They want partners like our companies to come and help them figure that thing out. And we are just at the early stages of that. Our customers, from a Lumen perspective, are really just starting to figure out that the networks of yesterday aren't going to suit for what they want to do within the next couple of quarters, much less the next decade. And so putting those pieces together and building ecosystems around the critical infrastructure to support these enterprises going faster on the adoption curve, I think is the job, and it's a fun one.
The consumer is going to speak. You're looking, on the shipping side, on the container side. You've got cargo interests that are driving, green fuel, and green corridors are being established. So it depends on what customer group you're talking about. And then in terms of the diversity of applications, in the same way where you're going to put the panels where the sun shines, you're going to put the data centers where energy is plentiful, the environment perhaps is a little bit cooler, and you're going to be an energy locavore. So,
and where the fiber is.
Exactly. Don't forget the fiber.
That's right.
So I think it's going to be a diverse set of solutions, and obviously solving scalability and cost, and of course clean. We'll continue to do that. SMRs we know are not really going to be an answer for many years to come. Natural gas obviously is the base load piece, but there's a lot of other pieces to the equation.
So let me switch a little bit. So Kate, certainly you're in a business that requires high capital investment, long-term returns and planning, and certainly a lot of your customers are trying to solve for energy in the long run. And we are, I think, in a period of unprecedented policy uncertainty. How do you navigate this time? Are you sitting, are you waiting it out? Are you have to make decisions at some point. Your customers have to make decisions at some point. How are you dealing with that?
We don't have the luxury of waiting. That's not an option. And as I said before, this is a national, level importance problem to solve. And honestly, as I said before, it is capital intensive, and it's also an industry that hasn't been making investments in itself in a long time. And we need capital to expand the internet at large. We also need capital to digitize everything to make it easy for customers to consume those services. And lo and behold, it boils down to ecosystems and partnerships. So we're sitting side by side with the hyperscalers designing these routes and co-funding these routes together in order to go faster. And that's turning out to deliver some pretty great results.
But that assumes that policy doesn't change somehow tomorrow on something or another that turns your investment,
It doesn't assume that the policy won't change. It diversifies the risk for any one company, and that's the trick. That's the name of the game navigating here, is building ecosystems and coalitions of majority to push through so that you're in it together, and you can also work together in partnership across public and private spaces to make sure that the right outcomes are delivered.
We've aggregated demand, so the market's still pretty fragmented, and airports and seaports and on the ground, pioneers that are developing these solutions. Everyone picks their area of expertise, and we deal with the last half mile. So we're dealing with the labor-intensive customer intimacy, the advisory, the underwriting, holding the credit on it. So that's our piece in the supply chain, is the last half mile. And we'll take some intelligent risk. We did that with sustainable aviation fuel many years ago, where we gave a guaranteed offtake. We weren't exactly sure how we were going to make it happen, but it wasn't a huge bet. They were able to take that, go to a bank, get financing, and build their plant. So we're dealing with today's reality, but facilitating the future intelligently in terms of where we think it's going to go. And that's our part in the whole equation.
Aren't your customers worried about how much they can count on the sort of current projections of demand, of regulation, and so on?
Of course. Of course. We insulate some of that. We'll wear some of the risk, but we're providing surety to them. Even simple things get complicated, and this is anything but simple. So we help them make those longer-term decisions, deal with the price risk management, help them navigate all the various different choices. And as Kate said, it is a series of ecosystems, and bringing these local solutions in, they're plentiful. We're not going to solve the whole equation in one fell swoop, but it's step by step and being part of the solution.
I think you're pushing on the right thing, though, is that, speed is important here, and there's a giant risk equation that nobody understands yet. And so what do? And I think we're seeing customers think very differently about their budgets. They have R&D budgets that look like this. They have IT budgets that look like this. They have AI budgets that look like that. And they're rearranging how they think about this, because you can't afford to do nothing. That is not an option. And while you don't know what the marketplace is going to look like, and you don't want to make, bets that you're going to regret later, when you rethink how you're allocating funding and how you're thinking about each individual decision, I think you start to see companies recognizing the need for a dramatic culture shift to go play to win instead of play not to lose. Waiting to figure out what happens in the market, that's a play not to lose strategy. Playing to win is taking on some risk and rearranging how you allocate your capital in order to make bets that are sensible.
I think that's a great place to end this session. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please welcome Dr. Martin Makary, Commissioner, U.S. Food and Drug Administration, and Amna Nawaz, co-anchor PBS NewsHour.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm Amna Nawaz from the PBS NewsHour. Commissioner Makary, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you, Emma.
Yeah. So let's jump right in. I know we don't have a ton of time, but it's been almost a month since you were confirmed, stepped into this new role. I want to talk about a lot of your plans ahead, but let's just begin with kind of give us a big picture here. This is an agency you spent a long time criticizing, right? A lot of the medical establishment you spent a long time criticizing from outside of government. Now you are tasked with leading this agency. What's been the toughest part for you to step into that role, and what's surprised you in these last few weeks?
Well, it's great to see you and great to be here. Yeah, you know, I think my feeling at Johns Hopkins over the last 22 years has been that there are a lot of big questions that we are not asking that we should be asking. And I think we've done a terrible thing to doctors. We've said, put your head down, focus on billing and coding. We're going to measure you by your throughput. And we get frustrated by the big questions, but we don't have time or energy or funding to ask those big questions. For example, why does it take more than 10 years for a drug to come to market in the United States? Why are clinical trials being done in Australia and not in the United States? Why don't we have domestic manufacturing of key medications? And why is the food supply so poisonous in the United States? We're watching all these childhood chronic diseases skyrocket in our generation that were rare 2 generations ago. You never heard of a peanut allergy. You hardly ever heard of attention deficit disorder. Now ADHD affects 1 in 7 children, and 40% of kids have a chronic condition. So I believe more medication is not the answer. We've got to start looking at root causes, and there's a lot the FDA can do.
Yeah, well, I know some people, experts will say a lot of that is about increased awareness, also more diagnosis and some of those things you mentioned. But in stepping into this role, I mean, you had harsh things to say about the medical establishment when you were outside of government. Do you feel like you have the trust of this team to help lead them right now?
I think the biggest, the biggest thing I've been vocal on is hospital price gouging, and the hospitals didn't like that, but I really felt like it had violated the sacred oath that we take as physicians. You can't take care of somebody and cure them of their ailment and then ruin their life financially, and I was very outspoken about that. I feel those informed consents when you walk into the emergency room to sign your life, home mortgage away is predatory. Now, the FDA has a lot of areas where we can make it more efficient, and so that's been a focus. I think if people have asked me, what's your agenda with the FDA? It's very simple.
Yeah.
I want to use 2 guiding principles, gold standard science and common sense, both. And we're going to do that to focus on really putting our efforts towards cures and meaningful treatments, diagnostics to help empower patients about their health, things like glucometers, and also healthy food for children, which was a massive issue in the election.
So let's talk a little bit about one of your first moves, because you got a lot of praise from food activists, some watchdog groups in particular, to phase out some artificial food dyes over time. Now, there is no mandate, right, for the industry to comply. You've seen some praise from some different individual companies, but also some industry pushback, a lot of people pointing to the fact that the food supply has been rigorously studied over years and found to be safe. So your response to that, and also how do you enforce this kind of move when it's not mandatory?
Yeah, so we did take action and announce that in the coming weeks we're going to remove 2 food ingredients. There's 8 total of 9, but there are 8 remaining petroleum-based food colors that are still on the where there has not been action. And so we have announced that we are going to work with industry and take all statutory and regulatory actions needed to try to get these total of 9 petroleum-based food dyes off the market. So 2 in the coming weeks. There was an action on red dye number 3 with 2 business days left in the last administration. They took action on 1. We're speeding up that time frame, and we're asking industry to work with us because I don't think any of us truly believe that they're entirely safe. And I think there's been this ability to hide behind the cloud of, well, we don't know and the studies are mixed. Who's going to do a study where you inject half of kids in a randomized controlled trial with crude oil. And we have good studies, and in 2007, Lancet had a study showing it was associated with attention deficit disorder. That is on the rise, so why take a risk? I err on protecting our children's safety.
But if it's found in the interest of public health, if you believe that these are harmful, why not just ban them? Why work with the industry to say, take your time, figure it out, comply in your own way?
I think you win more bees with honey than fire, and I think if we can work with, it's going to take them time to redesign their processes. If we do it right, as we've seen in Europe, where they already don't have many of these petroleum-based food colorants, and in Canada, you see no impact on food prices, which is also a national priority. So we're simply asking food manufacturing companies to remove these petroleum-based chemicals and replace them with natural ingredients for American children, as they have already done for European and Canadian children. As you know, there's 2 versions of cereal made by American companies, one with the vibrant colors for American kids and one without them for Canadian kids, both made by the American company. The vibrant colors that don't appear in nature and food mess with the mind of a developing child. And there's described phenomena in the research community where a kid is full, they feel the satiety reflex in the brain, but they still are attracted to the food. And that may in part explain the obesity epidemic, which is a diabetes epidemic. There's no one silver bullet solution, but it may be one thing involved that we can act on.
You have laid out some of your vision for what we might call an America First FDA. You talk a lot about efficiencies, wanting to improve those, speeding up processes, and cutting red tape. So just look ahead for us a bit, and where should we expect to see you tackle what you consider to be some of the most obvious inefficiencies? What's coming up?
Yeah, we have to look at the entire process and ask what is not really necessary. And also ask, are there economies of scale, and can we tailor the approval process to the condition being treated? If you're treating a condition that only affects 52 kids in the world, we shouldn't be requiring a randomized controlled trial. We may want to authorize or approve something for that condition based on what I call a plausible mechanism, a plausible scientific mechanism, almost like a plausible mechanism pathway. And if something is going to be broadly used in the United States, maybe we want to require a randomized controlled trial, maybe 1 instead of 2, and also have post-approval monitoring. We couldn't do that before well, but now with big data, just in the last 5 years or so, with cloud storage and the enormous amount of electronic health record data that lets you get into the free text field of what the chief complaint is with the nurse at triage, you can actually now look at adverse events way better than our self-reported adverse event reporting databases. We've got over 6 of these databases. They're clunky, they've been siloed, and so these are a lot of opportunities for efficiency.
You see this as a way to speed up the approval process over time?
Yes, it is, and one of those announcements that we just did to speed up the approval process and also reduce animal cruelty is, we just announced this 2 weeks ago, to reduce animal use in the toxicity preclinical phase. So the common sense piece of our agenda, the gold standard science of common sense, we were still requiring animal testing when a drug was already approved overseas and in broad use in humans. Well, by reducing that requirement and replacing it with computational modeling, where the AI looks at a molecule and predicts toxicity, or we administer it on a plate where the cells are grown, the liver hepatocytes are grown, and you can look at the injury to the tissue, is actually ultimately going to be better, or at least equivalent to the animal testing without the cruelty. I think I saw one report that one monoclonal antibody had done experiments in 144 chimpanzees and all these beagles and bunny rabbits. And what are we doing? We have to stop and ask, can we do things differently and better? And if we can, as we will with monoclonal antibodies, which is in the forefront of this, you will see the research and development, the R&D costs go down, drugs come to market faster because that animal toxicity takes 6 to 12 months, and ultimately that could lower drug prices.
So what kind of impact have any of the DOJ cuts had on the FDA? Can you tell us how many people, what that's saved you, you believe? And also on the approvals process, what's the impact there? Because I speak with some folks in the health tech space in particular who talk about the fact that it takes a long time already to get approvals through, and they worry without those people in place, it's going to take even longer. So what would you say to that?
So I'm glad you asked about that, because the approval process is a top priority. None of the cuts were to scientific reviewers or inspectors, and that was an important priority when the team came in and did some of those reductions in force. Now, they did it before I got in office, before I was in the chair, but they laid off about 2,000 or so employees. Some others took early retirement. I think what's important...
And where were those cuts, just to be specific?
Yeah, so they were in communications, IT, and what they call the legislative affairs and policy staff. And it was concentrated. And that's because there have been silos. We had travel offices in each silo. So those are efficiencies that we can do, a lot of IT efficiencies. What I think is an opportunity right now is to ask, how can we do those reviews with more teamwork? These silos had really become fiefdoms with center directors that were at war with the other centers sometimes. So we want more teamwork, and we want things to happen better. The one important point I want to make about any discussion of the cuts is that what you don't hear is that the FDA had 9,000 employees in 2006. It was about almost 19,000 just a few months ago. So any discussion of the reductions, I think, is helpful to understand in the context that the head count at the FDA in terms of number of employees has increased by 100% in the preceding years.
Among the people who was fired and got a lot of attention was Peter Marks, who was the FDA's top vaccine official for more than 8 years. And for people who were already concerned about some of the messaging they were hearing from Secretary Kennedy, expressing skepticism or anti-vaccine views over the years, that firing sent a very worrying signal. Was that an indication of the stance that you and the FDA will take on vaccines?
So he is a hematologist like my father, so he's a blood disorders doctor and cancer doctor. I think people think that he's a vaccine expert, but that's actually his role administratively was to oversee the Vaccine Research Center.
He did lead the vaccine division, though, correct?
He oversaw the center that houses the vaccine center. Mm-hmm. In that vaccine center, the two longstanding employees, Dr. Gruber and Dr. Klaus, the career scientists who had been there forever, and I don't want to suggest they're octogenarians, they'd been there for decades. They disagreed with him about the COVID shot in kids, and as a result, Dr. Marks removed them. He pushed them out, and that's not inside information or my opinion. That all came out in a House Judiciary hearing. So the irony that he's the top vaccine expert is that he pushed out the two top career scientists at the Vaccine Research Center.
But should people take it as a signal of your view on vaccines, that the man who led the vaccine division was fired as one of your first major moves as commissioner?
Good question. I'm glad you asked, because this is a question right now. I've said repeatedly, and I'll say it right now, my view on vaccines is not a secret. Vaccines save lives, and any death from a vaccine-preventable illness is a tragedy.
It's also been reported recently, I'm sure you saw, that Secretary Kennedy may pull the COVID shot from the CDC's vaccine schedule for kids. Is that being planned? Is that something you would support?
I don't know what he has planned or what discussions are happening with the CDC, because that recommendation lives within the CDC. But 85% of healthcare workers said no thank you to the recent COVID booster. Most Americans do not believe in the COVID booster shot for young, healthy children at this point, given the broad B and T cell immunity in the population. So if he does something with the COVID vaccine in children, I think it'll be warmly welcomed by a lot of Americans.
But what do you believe? As someone, as I know, says that you believe in the data, you believe in the science.
Yes.
What do you believe when it comes to whether or not people should get that vaccine for their children?
And so when people come to me and ask, should I get this vaccine, what I'll often say is, where there's a clinical trial showing a benefit, I will recommend it. And when there's no clinical trial showing a benefit for low-risk, healthy people, I tell them we don't know. And the reality is we don't know. I personally have not taken any COVID boosters myself.
As I mentioned, you say that you rely on the health data, you rely on the science, you're a hardcore data guy, as you described yourself. You've also published hundreds of scientific studies in your career on this very, very complicated topic of autism in particular. There is overwhelming scientific study and data that shows that there's really a range of factors, right? Genetic and environmental, other factors that could be interacting to cause it, and also that the increase in diagnoses that we've seen are due to improved diagnosis and greater awareness. So when you have Secretary Kennedy coming out and saying, we're going to run studies and we'll have, first he said an answer, I think now he's saying more answers or more information by September. What kind of science or data, to you, backs up that promise?
Well, what I heard him say is we're going to start understanding it by September with some data, and then I think I heard yesterday on television that he said within a year we hope to have some better data on this topic. A lot of Americans want to know what is driving the autism epidemic, and I do think there's a false narrative that it's really driven entirely by increased diagnoses. That is true. That's a part of it. That is a part of it. But you did not see the severe autism, the nonverbal, the self-harm, the repeated tics just a generation ago or 2 generations ago. And autism now affects 1 in 31 kids and 1 in 22 in California. And with boys, it's even higher. So we have an epidemic, and we've got to understand why. Now, I don't know what causes autism. I love the idea of formal studies that are going to be done at the NIH. But I have written a little bit on this topic in the past, and I personally believe it has something to do with the microbiome. That is the billion-plus different bacteria that are a garden of hormone-producing cells and serotonin-producing cells. 90% of your serotonin, which affects mood, is made by bacteria in the gut. And we're messing and carpet bombing this microbiome with number of insults.
When you say you personally believe it, though, is there science and data to back that up?
Yeah, so there's been there's a bunch. And so some of the observation has been that children with severe autism have different biodiversity of their stool than children who do not have autism. And so I do think that microbiome is different. Microbiomes are also inherited. You get some of it from your parents. Now, I don't think it's the sole factor, but maybe some of these environmental issues or toxins or changes in the diet or exposures where kids are living in a toxic soup, it may not directly cause autism. It may do it through the microbiome by changing that biodiversity. It probably also accounts for a lot of chronic inflammation. You have kids that have chronic abdominal pain. I had a teenager once who had chronic abdominal pain. We couldn't figure out what to do. We ordered the kitchen sink. They slap some diagnosis on the kid that's a generic, fancy medical term that basically means we don't know. And then we hear the kid is cured because they went to Italy for a summer. Something is going on in our diet. We have 1,000+ ingredients that are banned in Europe that are in the food supply in the United States. And that's why we started with this early step with food
But you'll follow the data and the science. Obviously, the anecdotes, right, the plural of anecdotes isn't necessarily data, as you know. I do want to ask you, because there's a lot of questions about another potential move by the administration, and that's the potential restriction of mifepristone, the abortion pill. I know during your confirmation hearings you were asked about it, didn't necessarily commit to any specific action. So could we see a restriction of that pill?
So I want to answer that, but just one point on data.
Yeah.
I do believe anecdotal experiences can be a data source. Now, it's not as robust as our level 1, 2, and 3 data studies that I've been doing my whole career. But when you have a handful of families come in and say, my kid had attention deficit disorder and aggressive behavior, we eliminated this from the diet, something like petroleum-based diets, and they improved, and then when they were reintroduced, the symptoms recurred. That is a data point.
Sure.
It's
but
not a robust study.
You policy on the basis of those anecdotes, correct?
Well, and if you want to err on the side of safety, what we did is we took the studies on petroleum-based food dyes, which were mixed but enough to suggest there may be something there, and those experiences, which are individual data points, and we said, let's err on the side of safety.
Okay. Yeah. Let me get back to my original question.
Sorry.
Because I know our time is running out. That's okay. On mifepristone, do you expect to take action further restricting the pill?
Yeah, I have no plans to take action on mifepristone.
could that be changed over the course of your tenure, given the pressure that I know has come from a lot of the political forces at play on this?
So I believe as a scientist, you got to evolve as the data comes in. And there, as you may know, there is an ongoing set of data that is coming into FDA on mifepristone. So if the data suggests something or tells us that there's a real signal, then we can't promise we're not going to act on that data that we have not yet seen.
But if that new data contradicts the decades of data that said that it's overwhelmingly safe and effective, you would go with the new data rather than the precedent of decades of data?
Well, it's very hypothetical, right? Because you're talking about the strength of the data, the safety of the data, the reliability of the data. So it's very hypothetical what you're asking, but in general, I'm a data guy.
Okay. Last question, and then 30 seconds or so we have left. There's this very big issue of public trust.
Yes,
and
yes.
obviously your agency has lost a lot of it over the years, in large part because of folks like you criticizing it from the outside. Now that you're leading the agency, how important is it to you to build back that public trust, and how do you do it?
So I don't think the public trust catastrophe is because I criticized it. I think it's because they bypassed the normal standard process of approving COVID boosters in kids and then mandated COVID vaccines. I think it's because public health officials insisted kids be shut out of school for nearly 18 months, causing tremendous damage. It's because toddlers and 2-year-olds were told to wear a mask for nearly 3 years. And a lot of this was with no data, the 6-foot distancing, no data. So the worst thing you can do as a doctor is to put out a recommendation with such absolutism when the reality is the data is very flimsy or there is no data. It's much better to say, I think this is helpful, but we don't have good data, but I would suggest doing it. You didn't see that. You saw the heavy hand of government and public health over the last 4 years. That's why public trust went from a 71% confidence level in 2019 to a 40% just last year in a JAMA study. This was a study. We have an epidemic of public trust, so I'm going to do everything I can to try to rebuild that by focusing on those two principles: gold standard science and common sense.
FDA Commissioner Marty Makary, thank you so much for being here. Appreciate your time.
Thank you so much.
Please welcome Eon Kreitz, CEO of Mattel, and Andrew Edgecliffe Johnson, CEO Editor at Semaphore.
Well, thank you and welcome to the CEO of Mattel, Will Ferrell. I've known Eon Kreitz for many years, long enough that I hope you'll accept that joke. But we've known each other in various roles where you've been at the intersection of entertainment, toys, and innovation. And your career has spanned everything from Power Rangers to Big Brother, venture capital and YouTube videos, and now obviously the distinction of being satirized by Will Ferrell in the Barbie movie. That movie wouldn't have happened without a strategy that you set in place when you arrived at Mattel 7 years ago, this month, I believe.
Just about.
Right, where you're repositioning this, decades-old toy business behind Fisher-Price, He-Man, the Magic 8 Ball, into an intellectual property-driven powerhouse. So I know that Mattel is in a quiet period before earnings, but before we get into that innovation story, I would be remiss of me not to ask you a question about tariffs. You have dramatically changed Mattel's supply chain over the years to reduce your reliance on China, I know, but it's still about 40% of all production. And your stock reacted sharply when the president announced his Liberation Day tariffs. So what do you know, from what you know so far, can you tell us the tariff impact will be on Mattel?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. It's great to be here. The Mattel evolved as a company, as you say, from being a toy manufacturing company that was making items to become an IP company that is managing franchises. And much of our business is about growing our toy business, but in addition, the opportunity that we see is to evolve beyond the toy aisle and capture full value from our intellectual properties. And as the owner of one of the most known, the strongest portfolio of family, children and family entertainment franchises in the world, we have a very exciting opportunity to capture value in other verticals in addition to the toy industry. When it comes to tariffs, we fully support the position of the Toy Association that there should be zero tariffs on toys globally. Toys is a foundational part of children's development. It plays to a fundamental human behavior. And we believe that toys, given the role of the toys play in society, they should be exempt from tariffs. Mattel as a company, given what you said, is well positioned relative to our competition, to the industry. Industry average is about 80 to 85% of toys made in China, as one case in point. We've reduced our China source product to around 40%. This year will be below 40%. And this is global. So the US exposure to tariff of China source product is about half of that.
Right.
In terms of global manufacturing. So we believe that we are better positioned relative to the industry. And in addition, given the scale of our business, the range of our product offering and price points, the fact that we make product in 7 different countries and have a flexible model, we have different ways to respond and mitigate for the impact of tariff. And of course, pricing is a last resort. And when it comes to pricing, we always keep the consumer in mind and work in collaboration with our retail partners.
I know you said at your last earnings that price increases could be a way you mitigate the impact of tariffs if they were to hit. Now that they seem to be hitting, in the intervening period, we've seen quite a significant fall in consumer confidence. Does that change your thinking on what you can do with pricing?
You know, we always keep the consumer in mind, as I said, to make sure that there's the right combination of quality and value for consumers. And you know, when you look at our product range, we sell the #1 toy in the world, which is a Hot Wheels basic car, for $1.25. But you can also buy a Hot Wheels collector set, a Daniel Arsham collector set, for $700. So the same Hot Wheels brand range from $1.25 to $700. And of course, that price range and product offering gives us a lot of flexibility to think carefully about pricing and sourcing and retail channel strategy. So that gives us flexibility. And this is why we believe we are entering this dynamic situation with different options and different capabilities and different tools to respond and mitigate for the impact of tariff on the cost of product made. Ultimately, it's about finding the right value for consumer and making sure that we create great product at affordable price points that will benefit the consumer.
So let's pull back from the tariff discussion for a moment and just talk about the broader innovation strategy at a high level. How do you define how you think about innovation at Mattel, what you've tried to do in repositioning it?
You know, at Mattel, innovation is a combination of art and science. What we do is driven by data, but also very much about creativity and innovation. Our brands are timeless, and our job is to make them timely. You take brands that have been around for decades, that stood the test of time, that have a built-in fan base, that have depth and quality and heritage value. But then that's not enough for today's consumer, because today's consumer just want to engage and interact with play systems and product that are relevant to them today. So at the core, what we do as a company is we infuse brand purpose and cultural relevance into everything we do. This is not just about toys, it's about content, it's about digital games, it's about different experiences. And the brand purpose is what makes our brands unique, what elevates our brands beyond the day-to-day, What is the reason for them to be? What is the benefit that you gain by interacting and engaging with our brands? And cultural relevance, it's about taking brands, making our brands timely and current and relevant to today. And a recent example was the LeBron James Ambassador doll that sold out almost immediately and became a global phenomenon in the moment. And this is another opportunity where we partnered with one of the most iconic athletes of all times and created something that excited and delighted fans everywhere, something that was unexpected. And a key part of what we do is to always try to break convention, be original, and do something that is different, that is unique, that adds value, that creates something that stands out in a crowded market.
So I've got to ask, does LeBron get a role in the next Barbie movie?
Maybe you should become one of our developers in the movie. You have
that's
great ideas.
We don't charge these insights at Semaphore. But part of, I think that points to another aspect of your innovation, which has been about market definition. You're just innovating in the markets you're trying to reach. You talked about the $700 Hot Wheels collectible, LeBron James, Ken doll. These are there's an adult collectibles market that you've identified that's been growing in a really interesting way. What did it take to kind of create and build and break into a new market like that?
Yeah, it is. The adult market or the kidult market is a very exciting opportunity within the toy industry. We're seeing a big white space that is becoming a core part of the industry, where adults are spending money to buy product, collectible product, and interact and engage with brands. In our case, our brands go back 2 and even 3 generations, and that gives us opportunity to engage people of different ages. But even if you go all the way back to the Barbie movie, that was not a movie that was targeting kids. That was aiming at a higher audience, older audience rather. But what's interesting about that movie is from the outset, the goal was not about creating a movie that will sell toys. The objective was to create quality content that people want to watch. It was about creating a movie that would become a cultural phenomenon from the very beginning, the very first meeting. It was not a movie to sell toys, and in fact, we didn't even think about, okay, let's make a movie. It was about how do you take our brands that have a large built-in fan base and create a cultural moment. And this mantra, in terms of focusing on quality, infusing brand purpose and cultural relevance, is what's driving our creativity and innovation.
I want to just ask you about a really interesting case study of one of those 2 or 3 generation products you mentioned. Hot Wheels, you've given us that high level of it's now the best-selling toy in the world, but it's more than 50 years old. How do you take a decades-old brand and kind of reimagine it and tell us a little bit, first of all, about where the Hot Wheels brand is now. You've talked about those products, but this is now, it's an entertainment brand as well. What are you doing with the whole thing, and how did you get it there?
Yeah, Hot Wheels is a brand that, as you said, have been around now for 56 years. It's already achieved 7 consecutive record high, and we just already said, we expect another record high year, 8 in a row. And this is really about how you evolve a simple car, a basic car, turn that into a play system with tracks and garage and other parts of the experience, but then elevate it to a holistic franchise that has content offering, one of Hot Wheels' top 10 shows on the entire platform across many countries. We now have a movie, a big film in development with J.J. Abrams as producer at Warner Brothers. We have live experiences. We have mobile games and digital games. It's about having a holistic franchise mindset as we develop the brand. And in addition, we continue to innovate through different partnerships. We recently announced a partnership with Formula One, and Ferrari to create their version of Hot Wheels. So, and what's interesting about Hot Wheels is the appeal that we see among adult collectors.
Right.
It's about complete, cultural lifestyle trend of car culture. And when it comes to creating an experience that innovates between product and content and games and digital engagement, there are very few brands in the world that play at the level of Hot Wheels. So Hot Wheels right now is at an incredible pace, and we expect to see more of that coming this year, all driven by innovation first and foremost, but always finding a way to connect with culture and find those societal moments that keep the brand fresh and timely.
All right, so we're at the World Economy Summit. Where in the world economy right now is Mattel going to find most growth in the coming year?
We're a global company. We sell product in 500,000 stores globally. This is about 75% of the business. The rest is online retail and e-commerce. And as a global company, we see opportunities around the world. The US market is still our largest, but we clearly see opportunities across the world. What's interesting about our brand offering is that it appeals to fans globally. I can't say that one market indexes higher than others because our brands are truly global. And when you see the success of our offering all the way from the Barbie movie to Mattel 163, which is our mobile game joint venture offering that is also thriving, and our brands overall, it's very telling about the potential that we have. And what is unique to our portfolio is that it's current, our brands are thriving, and the fact that you have a large built-in fan base that is actively, proactively searching for engagement and opportunities to interact with our brands is a very unique, strong competitive advantage that we intend to continue to leverage and build upon.
So what's the next movie coming out?
Well, the next movie is Masters of the Universe, which is currently in production. It already has a release date of June 5th of 2026. The next movie after that will be Matchbox, which is also currently in production with Skydance and John Cena in the lead, another great action movie. And what is going to be interesting is for people to see the range and the breadth of our offering from between the first movie, the Barbie Pink, all the way to The World of Eternia and Masters of the Universe and He-Man as our second movie, and everything in between.
So who's playing you in Masters of the Universe?
Take a guess. It might be Skeletor, right?
You heard it here first. Ynon, thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Please welcome Kathy Warden, Chair, CEO, and President of Northrop Grumman, and Liz Claman, anchor of the Claman Countdown on Fox Business Network.
Okay, this is a very rare interview that I promise is going to be fascinating. Northrop Grumman, one of the biggest defense companies in the world and one of the most respected, been around forever, but we're going to get into some serious stuff about security, this country, and it matters to every CEO, everybody who's here. So I just want to give you guys some insight. At Fox Business, I do the 3 p.m. Eastern hour, and I have a small but mighty team of about 7 people. Kathy Warden at Northrop Grumman's team is 100,000 people who can do basically magic. They can make a 200-ton plane disappear, invisible. They do the stealth bomber. They create and operate everything from all kinds of cyber equipment and radar to the F-18 Super Hornet. So we got a lot to talk about here. This is a very fast developing world. Everybody's talking about AI, quantum computing. And now one thing I do know about you is that CEOs, many of them here, are constantly hitting you up because they want to know what the threats are out there, but also the technology that is just burgeoning at the moment. So, you know, as we tap into your smart card of your brain, I want to start with this. You are at the nexus of a very tentative global atmosphere right now when it comes to a complex world. Russia, Ukraine, Israel being attacked from multiple fronts, Iran, of course, feeding all of this, not to mention that the Chinese are massively building up their Navy, their Air Force, all the while glaring at Taiwan. So when we talk about national military might, right now, who is the mightiest?
Well, absolutely the United States of America. And we have been, we will continue to be. And it's because this country has always been a country that dreams big, takes risk, and innovates to be better. And I think that's what sets this country apart and will continue to do so. The innovation economy that we have here is the strongest in the world. It's not just in Silicon Valley, it is all across this nation. And companies like ours are on that leading edge of technology because we want to give the US military and our allies technology that no one else can match, and give them that advantage on the battlefield. And we use commercial technology often as a starting point in all of the research and development that goes into commercial technology, but we don't stop there. We build on that baseline, and we have, at our company alone, 90% of the national security satellites have Northrop Grumman content in them. We have the world's record for the fastest microchip. It's about 1,000 times faster than what's in your smartphone. And those are just a few examples of how we build on common building blocks that are commercial, but go well beyond that so that our military is able to do things that no one else in the world can do.
So the US, obviously in the lead, but when it comes to sheer numbers, the China Navy is actually outnumbering our ships. Doesn't mean that they are better, but they are certainly ramping up. I know that the US Air Force is still well ahead, but that said, China is rapidly spending and expanding. So this comes at a time where the US government has said, we want to cut spending. Have you gotten any calls from Doge and Elon Musk yet?
I have not, and here's why. Because yes, there is efficiency to be gained in how our government operates, and we should do that. Streamline processes, move faster, cut waste. It's what every CEO does in the world. And our government needs to do it too, because as we all know, if you aren't doing that, bureaucracy is just growing within your organization. So that's a healthy thing to do. But at the same time, the national security environment that you describe is getting more challenging. China is closing that gap on the United States superiority. And so we do need to spend more. And we have seen bipartisan support from our Congress to do that. We have seen this administration come in and talk about bold new initiatives like the Golden Dome and talk about increasing spending on national security. So those two things can happen simultaneously and actually give us more resources as a nation to spend on the things that will really make a difference on the battlefield.
Okay, a couple of things here, and you just brought up the Golden Dome. I'm glad you did. But there are all kinds of questions about whether we could have something similar. I mean, Israel is a very small country, so it's easier at least to have the Iron Dome protecting that. But have you had any conversations about the Golden Dome concept? Are you angling for that contract? Have you spoken to anybody about it?
We have, and it is not just a contract. It's likely to be many programs and capabilities brought together in an architecture to protect this country, just like Israel's dome is. It is not a single contract and program. And so in that regard, I think the entire defense industrial base has roles to play in bringing capability forward, and this is a bold new initiative for our country.
So it's
It'll
not something
take time.
that Trump just threw out there, because we know he tends to sometimes do that.
I don't see it as that. I see it as an important step function to recognize that while we have oceans that separate us, we do need a strong homeland defense.
Listen, people read the headlines. They saw yesterday that when you put out your earnings, the B-21 next generation stealth raider is already going to be much more expensive than anticipated. Costs go up. Does any part of that increase in costs have to do with you're anticipating that materials might get more expensive due to tariffs? I mean, where is that coming from?
Yes, so certainly we are seeing inflationary impacts on the B-21 program, which was priced back in 2016 and is now being delivered. We all know that inflation has been at levels we did not anticipate over the last decade. So that has had an impact. But I do want to correct the record in that it is still below the cost targets that the government set for the B-21 Raider. So it is viewed as a model program because it is delivering within the budget constraints set. And we believe that as the 100 or more aircraft are built, this is not only a good investment for America, but it is a good investment for our shareholders in the long run as well.
Okay, so the inflation over the past decade that we get, we've had inflation come down, but just to put a finer point on this, anything about the recent tariffs that you are modeling for when it comes to possible cost increases, not just for the Stealth, but anything else that you're doing?
Like every company, we are looking at the impact of tariffs on our operating costs. We are working to mitigate those. We, unlike most, have almost all of our supply chain sourced from America, and many of our products build exclusively in America. And so we just don't have the volume of tariffs that most companies do. For us, it's less than 5% of our supply chain is sourced outside the United States.
People here who maybe aren't that familiar with the inner workings, and a lot of it is top secret, so I'm going to try and jog something out of Kathy here, but how do ideas germinate at Northrop Grumman? Are you listening to everybody, no matter what their ranking as far as the workforce is concerned? And do they start small and then they burgeon before they get to the battlefield? Can you give us a little window into that?
We invest in research and development and give our engineers the latitude to do true innovation and invention. And we also create a culture in our company where it's safe to speak up. You want that on the manufacturing floor, you want that in your functional organizations, but in particular, you want your engineers to have freedom to be able to explore ideas, embrace those, and vet them in an environment like what we have created, a culture that really supports and allows innovation to thrive. And so I'm really proud of that culture. And about 20% of our workforce are veterans, so they couple with our engineering expertise the understanding of, will this work? Is it something the military needs? How do we bring this to market? So it is really a great culture and combination that we have, bringing the expertise and passion of people who have served and used our products with engineers who are top of their craft in exploring new innovation.
And it's not just on the battlefield. You guys, it's in orbit. The Space Force is well into development. We know that. Northrop Grumman just landed 2 national security contracts, on-orbit satellite servicing and refueling. Okay, how does that work? I mean, you're talking about the Elixir program, where I was reading about this. It will enable the Space Force to refine tactics and procedures for rendezvousing up in orbit, I guess switching out operators, but also refueling. How is that going along?
Yeah, it's going really well. So this is an innovative concept that we pioneered, and it basically takes satellites that have a lifespan that they are built to operate. Often fuel is the limiting factor in that lifespan, and this allows us to take a satellite, close proximity operation, engage another satellite, refuel it, and then we fly away, and it has its life extended. So this is just changing the game for the military. They won't have to build new satellites. They can service ones that are already in operation, and we're supporting commercial customers with this as well. You know, think of satellites for your communication and broadband needs.
The world is littered, and it doesn't matter what industry you guys are in, but the world is littered with the leaders who thought they held the lead, and then the disruptor class comes up. Anduril, we've had them on the show. They are disrupting in the military drone world. There's Vannevar doing defense for the digital domain. Flamefront is creating advanced jet propulsion for unmanned defense platforms. A healthy mix, I think you would agree, is really important. In times like these, though, where the nation is facing critical threats, what gives Northrop Grumman the real advantage here?
We can innovate like the companies you just named, and frankly, our company is made up of many companies that started just like that, with innovators and founders who, in their particular field, whether it was Jack Northrop or Leroy Grumman or other innovators of their time in space and microelectronics, who built companies that are now part of Northrop Grumman. But we now also have scale. You talked about nearly 100,000 people, a significant number of PhDs in material sciences. We have over 50 million square feet of manufacturing capacity. That's 500 football fields, right? So when you think about the scale to be able to take an idea and bring it to life and deliver it, and the experience of not just engineering and designing, but producing and supporting. That's what our company brings after 80 plus years in this business.
Yeah, it's all very nice when you have a nice shiny object, but can you churn these things out?
That's
is
right.
the question.
That is absolutely right.
And clearly Northrop Grumman has an incredible record of doing that. What makes your life most difficult these days? Is it something coming out of the White House or Capitol Hill? Is it finding the right workers who are skilled enough? That's got to be a huge challenge because this is highly technical stuff.
If you would have asked me that question 2 years ago when we were in the heart of the pandemic, I would have told you finding skilled workers was our biggest challenge. We are not seeing that as the biggest challenge today. We are keeping up with technology and innovation, but the speed at which we need to operate today has increased dramatically. We talked about the gap closing with other countries around the world. Just globalization in general has made the world more competitive. And of course, technology is advancing at rates we've never seen before, and we are working to innovate across a broad technology spectrum. So it's about speed for us. And I'm really thrilled that the administration is also focused on speed, because we need to often pair with the government to go through the acquisition and development phase of a program as quickly as we possibly can to get fielded capability.
When you are looking at the threats that are out there, I suspect that many people at this conference have had companies where cyber attacks have occurred. It is a really huge challenge for them. Yeah. What do you see out there as the biggest threat? You've got sovereign nations generating these threats, whether it's China or North Korea or Russia, and they're constantly coming at these companies that are just trying to conduct business.
Yes. Well, clearly with what we do, we see nation-state actors try to get access to the information that we have inside of our companies.
Can I just ask which nation is coming at us the hardest?
Every nation that seeks to have the technology advantage that the US possesses today is coming after companies like ours because they want to get those designs. And so we have built inside our company a strong internal capability, but we also rely heavily on coordinating with our industry partners who see similar types of tactics and procedures, and we rely on the federal government to share information with us and us with them. I'm proud that often we are discovering things and sharing that out with others, but it is a hand-to-hand combat, and it is day-to-day. Every day we're seeing new things.
Okay, as our time finishes up here, I have to ask you, how does Northrop Grumman make a 200-ton plane disappear?
Well, if I told you that, I'd go to jail, and then they'd come get you too. So look, it's what we do, but it's a whole variety of technologies that come together. And it sounds hard, it is hard, but the takeaway for all of you is your nation is capable of doing that. And it's a phenomenal point of pride for our team, and it should be for you as well.
Kathy, thank you very much for talking about Northrop Grumman.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Please welcome Güliz Öztürk, CEO of Pegasus Airlines, Philip Buckendorf, CEO of Airspace Intelligence, and Tim McDonald, Climate and Energy Editor at Semaphore.
We have 20 minutes. Great. Great. Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here today. Really happy to be joining you again on this stage and to have a really interesting conversation about the future of air travel with a kind of focus on AI and the opportunities that exist for airlines to maximize the efficiency of their operations, find cost savings, energy savings, et cetera, through the use of new technology. And we have two companies joining us on stage here that are kind of working at both ends of that. Güliz, I wanted to start with you maybe and say a little bit about for an airline like Pegasus. How are you navigating this current moment of kind of trade uncertainty? What does that mean for a company like you in terms of keeping costs low for your customers? There's a lot of kind of uncertainty in the energy market as well for the fuel that you're using, and what does that mean for a company like Pegasus?
Thank you, Tim. First, I would like to thank you for the invitation to the panel. But maybe about Pegasus, I just would like to say a kind of an overview of what we're doing. We're an airline based in Turkey, having the LCC model. We're running 120 aircraft and carrying close to 40 million passengers. We're the second biggest carrier of Turkey. We're not flying to US, we're flying to Europe, Middle East, and also North Africa. So this is the overview of the airline. And now in the airline business, you're very right to say that we have lots of parameters affecting the cost structure of the airline. The main one is, of course, the fuel cost, about 35 to 40%, depending on the rate of the fuel, the price of the fuel. But uncertainty actually is the nature of the business. We have every year, because we're impacted for different type of parameters like social, economical, political, and everything. The aviation business, the airline itself, is successful as it navigates through those uncertainties. So we have never seen, like COVID was another 2.5 years of a dramatic time period for the aviation sector. But I'm doing this business for over 30 years now. Like, I've never seen consecutive 3 to 4 years where we have all positive, everything as expected. So as the airlines, we should know how to tackle with those. Now what we do is, on the LCC business, because the promise to our customers is the lowest fare possible, and this is how we make the airline grow sustainably and profitable way. We should be well equipped with the cost management principles, and Pegasus is doing that very well. Like on the fuel efficiency, we use a platform. Now we will be integrating AI on it. On the operational processes, we're trying to simplify everything. And we managed, since the exit of COVID, since 3 years, we are the lowest CASK operator. CASK is cost per available seat kilometer, so we use it in the airline business. So we are the lowest CASK owner globally, I have to say. All those fuel volatility, for example, of course has an impact because we're selling in advance. Right now, for example, it's $65, $66 per barrel, which is a tailwind for us. That's good. But as long as it's having those up and downs, we have to find tools like hedging, for example, or it's like other cost items. In every activity we do, we're after optimization, and that's where also we use technology now to have it done in a more cost-efficient way.
Right. And so let's Philip, can you tell us a little bit about airspace, because this is the technology that we're sort of talking about here. Tell us a bit about what you guys do and how, you know, the role that you see for AI in helping airlines navigate some of this uncertainty now.
Absolutely. So ultimately, we develop AI-powered command and control systems to power the most critical decision-making in the most complex domains. That's airline operations, air traffic management, military logistics. Ultimately, our customers all share a common problem, which is they find themselves increasingly operate in a uncertain, very dynamic world. The operating domain is changing rapidly. And what we help them with is to predict and simulate the operating domain. No matter if that is several hours out, several days, or several weeks out, flag potential issues, and then help them recover from situations that are not favorable to their operation. And that is really where AI is playing a significant role, given what is possible now with the latest models. It can shift these organizations from just looking at data displays that show them where the planes are or where the weather is, to a world where you can see, hey, this is the future state of my operations. This is where my flights are going to be. This is where my cargo is going to be. And this is how my operation is going to be impacted downstream. So you can be more proactive in how you run the entire organization. And that is absolutely critical in these complex operations, because it's so hard to recover once things are falling apart, because there's so many moving pieces.
So you have like can you just unpack a little bit for us how that works? You have some machine learning or the sort of predictive capability that gives you that kind of insight, or what's some examples of how airlines might use this?
Yeah, there are really like three parts to it. The first part is you want to integrate as much geospatial data as possible that is describing the airspace, the operating domain. And so that data integration has become a lot easier because you can use technology like LLMs to actually fuse the data, right? So we're dealing with industries where you have so many data sources and all of them contradict each other. And so now how do you actually build a common picture of like what does the operating domain look like? And then again, you don't just want to relay that to the organization. Now where the power really comes in is that you can say, hey, this is what the future looks like. And you can kind of run a simulation, a look ahead, and you can visualize that to the human decision maker. And then you have really this like human machine teaming and pairing where the human decision maker, the operator, has information and intelligence that they never had before. Like the holy grail of intelligence is like understanding what the future looks like. And that is so much more important when the world is becoming uncertain. And I think a lot of the conversations that happen throughout this conference, I think if they all boil down to one thing and that we all agree on, is that the next 10, 20 years are probably looking a lot more uncertain than the last 20 years. No matter if that is more volatile weather or geopolitical tensions on the rise, tariff sanctions, trade, maybe not traveling as freely over the oceans and across the air as historically. And that's where predictability really is important.
Yeah, and Guliz, can you kind of translate what that means for the experience of your customers? This, if airlines are kind of turning a bit more to AI, is it, we're going to see flights running on time more, or cheaper tickets, or what does that mean for us as flyers?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like what Philip explained, of course, as we use the huge data translated with the AI to our teams who are running the operations, then they have scenarios in hand how to adjust the disruption. This definitely helps to increase the on-time performance, the operational efficiency also on the cost side, which reflects a satisfaction on the customer side. Because the uncertainty of the airline business is coming, as I said, it's in the nature, it's coming from its operations, because the weather is not predictable. I mean, of course we have that AI would help through that maybe more, but still we have, because of the climate change also, We have so many unexpected situations. So at the end, whatever we do, either let's say we have an efficiency on the cost side, or we have an efficiency on the customer satisfaction side. This will be translated into a cost efficiency, which would help, which would be more affordable for the customers to travel, or they will travel more on time, or even if they travel, even if there are delays, and I have to say this is really, I mean, delays are the least desired thing for an airline. Sometimes our customers are not sure of how the airline would behave, but really we're all trying to be on time, because that is totally very inefficient for the airline. So either they'll get more affordable fares with the cost efficiency, or they will have, even if there are delays, they will have more in real-time information about this.
Yeah.
So we do really invest in technology at Pegasus regarding this. We call it disruption management. We have projects going on. We have some AI projects going on. We established an innovation lab in Silicon Valley last year. So there are projects coming into our practices now. For example, just an example, I mean, we have started the voice cloning of a real captain, the head of the pilots, his voice. And so it's now on air on our flights, like he speaks Spanish and then Arabic, and this is with AI.
Nice.
Yes, that was the first output. That's good for the customer satisfaction, because from our surveys we know that the customers flying, they are more would like to see the captains.
Right.
So I mean, on the pricing we use AI, but generative AI will change and will shape the future, I believe.
Could you say a bit, Guliz, about your sustainability initiatives, and how do you see the market for sustainable aviation fuel evolving? And also, we're in this relatively low price environment for oil, as you said. Does that make SAF less competitive? How do you navigate that?
SAF, it is less competitive. Yes, it's like 3 times more expensive right now, maybe 4 times because of the prices coming down. But this is also in line with the production size, because it's, I mean, according to IATA, we will need in 2050 the 2,000 times more of intake, which is done in 23, 2,000 times. So I mean, the SAF production in Turkey, we're not there yet. In the US there is some, but in Europe it's very limited. So I mean, this initiative, where we say net zero initiative by 2050, we should have a stakeholder managed type of policy there, because without SAF, it's not possible, for sure. For example, we're investing in new aircraft. We have ordered 200 new generation aircraft. Our fleet age is 4.5 years old only, so we have a fuel-efficient fleet right now. About 1/3 of our efficiency, the emission I mean, will come from this. So this is good, but according to our plan, another 36% should come from SAF. So the governments should have some incentive programs. We need a strategy, and a more aggressive one, if you want to reach there.
Right, because that strategy is not very clear to get to the necessary
individually
volume.
We do it, but it's a kind of a more coherent, and with the governments, with the producers, at the government level and maybe intergovernment level.
Yeah. Philip, could you say a bit about? So I'm often interviewing energy companies about how they are looking at the data center and AI challenge. We've had some utilities on stage this week talking about this. From your point of view, you're kind of coming at this from the other end as an AI company. I mean, do you see energy access as a bottleneck that you are worried about, or how do you kind of view this sort of energy piece? And I'm wondering also if cybersecurity is something we should be thinking about if airlines are turning more to AI. How do you view those challenges?
Yeah, I would say as a consumer of energy, we haven't really seen impact, or it has not been a limiting factor to us. Doesn't mean it will stay that way forever, but so far it hasn't. I would think more as a kind of producer of AI and serving institutions. One very interesting sector where our technology applies is actually modeling the energy grid. So given the disruption, the rapid change that is coming to the energy grid in terms of like new resources of energy that go live, as well as new forms of demand that just didn't exist, and those change month to month at the moment. Modeling that operation, modeling that operating domain is very, very much needed. And so again, that's where our technology applies, right? We can model an airline network of like what's the future state of the network. We can apply the same technology to an energy grid. End of the day, it's like nodes and edges, right? Your nodes can be a power plant, your nodes can be an airport. And I think this bigger idea that we follow at ASI, which is like how do we move like the most impactful organizations and institutions from a world where they are just in this like reactive state, where they react to the change of what their organization needs to do, to just being a bit more proactive. And in the world of energy, that is so needed, right? It's like it takes several years, sometimes more than a decade, to build new energy sources, right, before they go live. And you really want to understand like where do you put them, and does a business case and all that make sense, and how do you connect those sources, right?
And on the kind of cybersecurity question, I mean, how do you feel that fits in here? It's obviously important to keep this information secure if we're dealing with air travel, and how does that fit in?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that equally applies to the world of logistics very much. I think we're very much living in a world where mission critical infrastructure, I mean, we talked about this before coming on stage. You're based in Kiev, right? It's like we see it in Ukraine. Mission critical infrastructure, civilian infrastructure is part of a conflict, no matter if that conflict is hot or cold. And I think both from perspective in Europe, but very much here in the US, is that infrastructure is going to be targeted if we're seeing greater conflicts happening, and that already happens. And so how do you not only optimize that infrastructure, but also how do you protect it is absolutely critical, no matter if that is against sabotage or cyber, because if you lose key nodes, no matter if that's for the energy grid or for key logistical networks, you have these operations fall apart really quickly.
Yeah. Guliz, I guess I just wanted to zoom out one more question sort of about the macro environment. We were talking backstage a little bit about the recovery in air travel that you've seen since COVID, and where do you see that kind of going in the next year? I mean, if we are moving into a recessionary period, does that mean less air travel? Maybe for a low cost airline, it could actually be a tailwind for you, or how do you kind of see this environment?
I think the demand-wise, the airline business has gone through a good testing period during COVID. So everybody was talking about if people will again have the flights or will be more like by road, by car, but no, it did not happen. I mean, by the exit of COVID in our region, by 22, by the second quarter of 22, we had the exit from the COVID, and I think Turkey was one of the highest capacity bringing back country, was one of the highest globally. We have grown until that time, since the exit of COVID. Every year, like since 3 years, we're adding 15, 16 new aircraft into the fleet. Last year's growth was about 17%. So how we see the demand right now, as of now, what we see is like second quarter is strong. We see the forward bookings, again, demand is continuing for the summer period. And people are flying. This is an essential need. They're eating, they're having like the essential needs. Travel is in it. Flying is in it. The issue is affordability is important. And they are searching by those inflationary pressures, of course. They're searching more affordable way of travels. LCCs are advantages, so we're advantages that as long as they find a better alternative in terms of expenditure, then they prefer to, of course, spend it on the destination where they fly instead of giving it to the airline. Right. So we don't see, as of now, which is, we know, very uncertain. As of now, the demand seems robust.
Okay, that's great. Philip, just in the last few seconds that we have, you were saying something interesting backstage about the experience of an AI startup in the U.S. and sort of choice to be based here versus Europe. And could you say a little bit about that and sort of what drew you to start a company like this in the U.S.? What kind of makes this a good environment for that?
Yeah, I moved to the U.S. 15 years ago. This is my third company. The environment that has been built specifically around Silicon Valley now, I would say that has been a bit more decentralized all over the US, really foster technology. Like I can speak for the companies that I've been founding and building. I would have not been able to do that in Europe at the speed, with the capital resources, and then also the customer conviction. It always takes the first few partners and customers that have conviction to try something new, and that is just an ecosystem that I think it's the powerhouse of the U.S. And behind the tech sector, and just doesn't exist in Europe to that extent.
Yeah. Great. Well, Philip and Guluz, thank you so much for this conversation. Really appreciate it. It's super interesting.
Thank
and join me. Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. You guys can go ahead and go up. So thanks everybody for joining. We're going to take a break for lunch now, but please join us again here at 2:30. We're going to have Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy is going to be here, Etsy, and other guests are going to be here, so it's going to be great. 2:30.